Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the no less than two Women's International Norm events that are going on from the London Mind Sports Centre at the moment. I'm joined by GM Peter Wells.
Hello, nice to see you.
And we are going to start off with the ECF Women's Invitational Norm event. We're going to look at the game, first of all, between Lanyao, who's known as Lisa, and Elżbieta Vine. So let's have a look. Okay, should we start from the start?
Yeah,
Peter?
let's start from the beginning. Let's see
Start
how
from the
because
beginning.
it looks like some sort of Rossolimo, but there are different types, and it's worth seeing how it came.
Yeah, and now we let's also have a look at the scores on the doors. So
Yes, I think Elizabeth had a bit of a rough morning, so maybe
she?
yeah, she's struggling.
So we are playing. So Lanyao is on 3 out of 3. Madara and Salomea are on 2, and then Sheila and Audrey 1.5. Sarah, Olivia, Canwell, Yao, and Elżbieta all on 1 out of 3.
So I think was it Sarah's rather convincing win this morning, which was against Elizabeth. I think it was really quite. It was nice,
right? Yes,
nicely put away the part of the game I saw.
Yeah, so Sarah's
bouncing back. I think
bouncing back. Very nice to see. Okay, so this is another E4 opening, and let's see. So E4, C5 a Sicilian, knight f3, knight c6, b5.
So, I mean, this is one of the most respectable kind of non-open Sicilians, I think, anti-Sicilians as they're called sometimes. I mean, this one's really mainstream, and it's for some people it's a slight disadvantage to playing 2 knight c6, but of course some systems need that move order. So this one, it's very respectable. But Black has a whole range of ways of dealing with it. What does she go for?
She goes a6.
Oh, that's a funny one to me because I know so many lines where White's pretty happy to take on c6 immediately anyway. So after g6, after e6, after both of those moves, taking on c6 is quite a respectable option. So I'm a little bit skeptical about a6.
The one thing you can't do as White is drop back to a4, because then you've got the old Noah's Ark trap. Bishop a4, then Black goes b5, bishop back, and trapping that bishop.
Why is that called the Noah's Ark trap?
I guess it's just a very old trap.
Oh, okay. It's just age.
That's my guess.
The bishop's meeting its demise very much one by one, isn't it?
Yeah, that is true.
But yes, taking on. I mean, the other thing is when you take on c6 now, you do get Black does have this slightly weak b6 square, and now it might take some quite precise play to show that that's a significant weakness. But whenever I'm playing these positions with White, I'm happier if Black's pawn is on a6 than a7.
Okay, yeah.
So that's it's a slightly odd choice, I think, because there are lots of perfectly decent choices for Black on move 3. I mean, it's a good opening for getting an interesting position as White still, I think. But
I mean, if Black does not play a6, White will not always take on c6.
No, they won't always take, but I still think that taking is among the sort of most challenging variations in a lot of cases. Definitely not worth a tempo to kind of convince White they need to play.
They sometimes do like rook e1 and bishop f1, don't they? From there.
Oh, that's when Simon Williams tweeted about just that last night. It's when he likes to get his g5 move in. He was talking about how he knows it's unsound, but he can't help himself. That was
yes, I saw that.
That's the spirit. But that's exactly it. Yeah. That's another way of doing it. That's against e6. I suppose that exists against g6 as well, but I think it's less scary in that case.
Yeah.
No, it exists there as well, actually. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's very strange. The bishop is actually quite well placed on f1 for not blocking other things, but obviously you need to get it out in the first place to bring your other pieces into place.
Yeah.
It's odd that. Pieces. Okay. Homing pieces. It's quite strange.
So Lisa castles, queen c7.
Okay, so I think this means Black wants to play with e5, which in principle makes quite a lot of sense. I don't know. There may be some complex reason why you can't go queen c7 on move 3 with a similar hope, where you still might take back with the pawn but save the a6 tempo. Okay, but she wants to play with e5, which makes... I mean, there are some lines with e6 where you play with e5 still, so That's
Okay. So yeah, so she's kind of saved a tempo
She would
that
have
way.
saved back a tempo that way in
Saved back a
sense,
tempo, yeah. E5.
But you get a horse on c4, you're still kind of eyeing up that a6 square a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, b6. That's the thing.
Yeah.
A little bit nervous for.
Yes, and we do actually see Lanyao putting her knight going knight d2 in a moment to go that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of decent ways to develop. I mean, one question for white here would be whether to aim for a quick f4 move or whether to play on the queen side. It's one of the nice things about the system. White can often play on either side of the board. You can play with a3 and b4 and open the queen side, or you can move the f3 knight and then play f4 and attack that side. It's quite nice.
Have you seen enough of Lanyao's chess yet to get a feel of what sort of games she particularly likes?
Well, we saw her do some good tactics yesterday. We saw it was her knight g5 move, wasn't it?
Yes.
Against Sarah, which had the queen e8. That was a nice tactic. And I suspect that she's tactically quite sharp. I don't know. I mean, she's ridden a tiny bit of good fortune to be on 3 out of 3. I think in round 2, didn't we think she? I thought she was either in
round 2. It looked like because she was against Sarah, wasn't she? And it looked like.
Oh no, sorry, that's round 2. No, around maybe it was one of the games. I wasn't expecting her to win, and then she.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't fully got her style yet. But this is a nice position for any style. So you can. I mean, I don't think there's a big difference in whether you're an attacking player or a positional player as to whether you go a3 and b4 or f4. That I think you just prefer one handling of this position. But
okay, bishop
e3 works with any of the systems, I think. So bishop g4. Okay.
Knight d2. So that looks like she is going to try and come around to c4 perhaps and keep an eye on the e5 pawn, but also on that weakened b6 square.
Yeah, it's also knight d2 is also sometimes useful because if you can persuade black to play bishop takes f3, then it's quite often more harmonious to take back with the knight than a queen. Although I don't think that's necessarily true in this position because I do think the c4.
I guess you could even go like rook e1, knight f1, and knight g3 that way if you wanted to. You
could. That would be. I mean, I think that after h3. I mean, it may well be that h3, bishop h5, sometimes it's also you can play g4 without too much risk. And you want to be a bit careful so long as black hasn't castled kingside. But yeah, maybe you can go knight f1 to g3. But I think, for the moment she'll probably play h3 and see what happens first. But we'll see. Black played knight f6.
Knight f6.
Okay. That knight may well end up thinking it belongs on d7 to give that b6 square and the e5 pawn some cover. So that sort of. I mean, black does play a system not dissimilar to this, kicking off with 3 knight f6 as well. I think there are lots of other ways of reaching this sort of position.
Yeah.
Rook
f7 and rook e1.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty much a declaration. She's not going down the f4
route. Yeah.
Okay, I want to see what route she is going. I mean, because although White's position is quite a pretty picture, it needs something to do. So she will. It could just be that is she defending the queen in order to prepare that knight to c4 actually threatens to take on e5. That's a possibility.
Maybe yes.
On queen takes e5 and bishop takes e2. But I think knight c4 is going to get met with knight d7 in most cases anyway. So I don't think that's a huge gain. Yeah, I want to see what plan she's going to adopt here.
Oh, h5. Okay, now
that's the thing. Sometimes you don't need to worry about your plan because your opponent will declare their planning in advance.
Yes.
I mean, I'm kind of, for someone who lost quite a difficult game this morning, I'm quite impressed by the sort of character of that move. There's definitely a willingness to come in and fight and try and get back. I'm not sure. I mean, I'd sort of need a bit longer to think about the soundness of the move. I mean, those h5s are often very interesting when you can leave the bishop there in reply to white playing h3.
Yeah.
But for that to work, I would say more often than not, you need the queen, which is currently on c7, to have access to the kingside. And I'm trying to see how easily the queen could find, can white afford to play h3 and then take the bishop if the queen is that far away from the kingside? It's not impossible that she can. So it's a very interesting move, h5. I can't see us. I mean, is there a plan B to it? I could see that she might be wanting to go h4 and then bishop h5 if white doesn't do anything now. I think white should probably go h3 and see whether black is serious about about leaving.
So it's about leaving the bishop there.
I mean, it may attack the bishop, and it also prevents black playing h4. So why not just flick it in anyway? It doesn't significantly weaken white's position in any way playing h3. So that's what I would do here. I'd see whether black really means it about h5.
I'm also wondering what black's intending to do with the king, whether it's gonna.
Well, I think h5 would be quite odd if she was intending to go short.
Side.
I think she has to be intending to.
She has to be going long. Queen side.
Long, but it's interesting. It would be anyone playing this variation should just do a bit of training practice of how you attack that set of pawns if the opponent castles queenside.
Yeah,
there is an attack to be had, but it's not sort of trivial to.
Well, I mean, there are 4 pawns there, aren't there? Kind of.
Yeah, they do sort of cover some squares. But on the other hand, the advanced C pawn means that A3 and B4 has good chances of opening some file or other.
Yes.
It's just a question of whether that file is going to be incredibly helpful. I mean, of course, if black does that, she may well reach a position where she would have had to play A6 anyway, and then I'll have to say she had very great long-range foresight.
Hi, Waterford Wizard.
So does she really need it?
Unless black goes back, black could go back to e6. If she goes back somewhere else, then I expect we will see this knight c4.
But if you went to e6, you'd kind of probably want to follow that with h6 rather than h5 to keep that knight out of g5 permanently.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I sort of think that she has to either. I don't know quite what she's intending to do. I'm not convinced.
You still think she might leave it there?
I'm not convinced that she can, but I think I think the position, the logic of the position demands that you would be able to leave it there, but I'm just not sure that she can. Yeah. So then I'm not sure that the position holds together that well, but we'll see what she comes up with. Has she moved yet?
No. And what we're going to do is look at. We'll go through the other games and then.
It's a very interesting start. Anyway, I mean, we were very lucky yesterday. I mean, several of the games yesterday actually ended in draws, I think, but we were watching some very exciting chess along the way.
Indeed, yeah. There's a lot of action in these tournaments.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay. That's not. Right, round 2 here.
Yes, it would be a shame if we found all the games had finished. The blow, wouldn't it?
Okay, so this is Sarah after her good win this morning, and Madara. And Madara's on. She's on one of the ones on 2 out of 3, isn't she?
I'm trying to remember what was the game we saw from Madara yesterday.
So yesterday we saw a draw, Madara against Sheila.
That's right, that game.
Remember that? And Sheila had the bishop in the end game.
Yes, and actually the engine shows what I thought when I glanced at it briefly, that in the final position, white's actually got some serious chances.
Okay.
Because black's kind of come to a dead end and white had chances to press on the other side. But I think she was I think she had decided before that she was
maybe had enough by that stage.
Well, sometimes if you think you're slightly worse, then you miss that moment when you actually then become slightly better. I mean, I've done that myself a few times.
Yeah.
You sort of get into a mentality.
So we've got a d4, d5, bishop f4. So a London.
Well, this kind of thing is very popular these days, isn't it?
Very popular. Yeah.
Very
c5.
Popular. C5.
C3.
C3 is interesting because a lot of the time people play E3, which does 2 things. It allows black to play a sort of reversed Queen's Gambit exchange variation pawn structure. It allows black to play Keith's pawn structure. But white has that possibility, as we saw yesterday, of sort of playing knight to c3 instead of. But the other thing is, in this position, black can play c takes d4 with a reasonably direct transposition into an exchange Slav. It's just that's not to a lot of people's taste, mine included.
Thanks for the following, Anita.
I don't think that's Sarah's taste either to play an exchange Slav with black. Slightly dry quality sort of thing. I think she likes to attack a bit more.
Yeah, she likes quite open positions.
Yeah, she likes to attack. I think she'll just go knight c6. I mean, the only thing you need to check once white's played c3, black always needs to check that white can't take on c5 and then sort of hang on to it for dear life. That's the. So yeah, you got to make sure. Sometimes if you think about how the Slav works in reverse, there are quite a few positions where black grabs a pawn on c4 and then holds on to it with b5. But I think on the whole, bishop f4 makes those less likely. The bishop's kind of needed on the queen side when you do that sort of greediness. So I expect she'll just go e3 and.
She went e3. Yeah. Knight f6.
And then knight d2.
And then knight d2.
Yeah, this is the position in which if you go knight f3, queen b6 is very pleasant for black. White doesn't really have a good way of dealing with that. But if you go queen b6 now, there are all sorts of complicated variations. I think white can take on c5 and various things. And that's a bit of a minefield for black. So I think this is, if you can get this position, it's a sensible move order. On the other hand, it does mean that black has the option of playing bishop f5 and white can't then play bishop d3 to challenge it. That's the kind of...
Yeah, so this is what Sarah's done.
That's what she's done. I think that's a pretty sensible reaction, because I think queen b6, you need to have analysed it with a lot of care and attention to make that worth playing. And I'm not sure it's worth playing anyway, actually. I think it may just be quite good for white. Bishop f5 is very sensible, I think.
Yeah. Okay, and that's where they are.
So that's one of the things, the London system, people say it's boring, and, they kind of have a point, but there are a lot of little nuances in the opening as well, and that's why I think it became popular, because there were so many little tricks and traps if black tries to play ambitiously and stuff. I think that's part of the reason it's had a revival. Okay, we'll see how this one develops. This is one of those positions which could go either way. It could become really exciting, or it could sort of fizzle out and go a bit dull, but Well,
I suppose it's very appropriate, the London system being played in London.
Yeah, is that really the opening we want our capital city associated with?
Now, let's see Audrey against Salomea. And so another e4, another Sicilian we have.
Yes, a c3 one, presumably.
Knight f3, e6, and c3.
c3 exactly. Now. Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said sometimes for saving c3 till move 3, just in terms of restricting some of black's options, if you know what black's going to play on move 2. But e6 is a tricky one, because then if black plays d5 now, white either has to play some relatively dry sort of Tarrasch French type position.
Yeah, what do you do? Take off and then d4?
You can also, I think, you can try and play e5 and try and get an advanced French, but d4, as far as I remember, is not a bad move for black in that position. So it's not, it's not the simplest thing in the world to... But of course, black can play differently, as she has here, and go knight f... You can play knight f6 in conjunction with various second moves. If you play a knight f6 system, you're likely to do that against whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always played knight f6 systems, but I sneakily think that d5 might really be the better move. It's odd that sometimes you just don't... You like moves that you suspect aren't quite the best ones. But
yeah.
Then you'd think by my age you might be grown up enough to override your preference and play the better one. It doesn't always work like that, does it?
No. Okay, update on the Reykjavik tournament. Diana Merz's next opponent is going to be David Cummings of Canada, and I am.
Well, so, David Cummings of Oxford University as well. I mean,
it's the same David Cummings. I was wondering. Yeah,
it is the same David Cummings. I think he was probably a graduate student in my day as an undergrad. You know, back then.
So you know him then pretty well.
I don't know him tremendously well, but I mean, I've played in teams with him. I know him a little bit. Yeah, he's a nice guy. And he was writing for Chess Publishing for a while. I don't know if he still is, but he had. Do you remember he had quite a few columns on?
I remember there were.
The Chess Publishing site.
Okay.
I think he was doing the English and stuff, and he was writing good stuff.
Okay.
So these positions are interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've always played these positions. When I play this with black, I tend to play without e6. So these things are going to be.
Yeah. You can do it with.
You can do it with d6 or with knight c6 in various ways, but e6.
Okay.
But this is very. I mean, it's very mainstream, sensible stuff as well. It's well documented.
You can actually get something like this out of the Mora as well.
Well, only if people are. Only if people don't realise you've pawn.
Too afraid to take it off.
If people don't realise you've blundered a pawn, you could easily end up with this position.
D6.
Yes, I don't know. I think d6 is because you can do knight. You could. Well, I did used to play this once or twice with b6 and try and play sort of on the white squares and stuff. It sort of felt to me at the time like it was something a Nimzo-Indian player ought to be keen to do. Kind of sometimes playing bishop b4 and trying to take a knight off and compete for the white squares. But I think d6 is a sounder way, really.
Yeah, and you can go knight c6 as well, can't you?
Well, I think that she may well go knight c6 as well. And I was trying to think with d6 and knight c6 now, I think the move order matters quite a lot. But I can't work out why it might here. I think here black has a bit of flexibility how she does it.
Yeah. Okay. So Audrey goes bishop
d3. Okay, and knight c6.
Knight c6.
Yeah.
And castles.
Yeah. So I guess there's a few things that players need to be aware of in this position. I guess one of them is that if you try and play something like d takes c5 and then knight... Oh, she played knight b4.
She has, yeah.
Wow. So that's taken the wind out of my sails. I'm not sure whether... I thought what white had done was normal. But of course, there are some positions where white plays an early A3, but I didn't think this was one of them.
Yeah, because if this bishop moves now, black can just take on E5 and
try to go
queens.
knight C2 at the end. And the thing is, if you take on E5 first and then play knight B4, I would think that bishop E4 is a good move because white has a lot of space then, even without the queens on. If white plays bishop E4 now, I assume black can just play D5 and get some kind of a French with the bishop pair, which may not be that amazing, but it could easily discourage white from doing it.
My hair colour, Bagatelle superfan.
What was that? Is your hair colour under discussion?
It is under discussion. I think there must be a follow-up. Fine. All right. Well, we've got quite a few. I mean, quite a few people.
Is this where they're at?
Natural. No, not natural, in fact. Not natural. Although it's sort of, yes. No, I went to, when did I go? I had it coloured on quite recently. It was a Friday, maybe like a week ago. It was just a week ago. Yeah.
I'd like to point out that my grey is entirely natural.
Is yours natural, Peter? Yeah.
I haven't put this grey as a. I was quite pleased recently because it seemed to me to have gone completely grey, and then I had a haircut and I realised that it was some of the outer ones which were even worse. So some slight colour was restored. But Freya, I said to my 5-year-old Freya that I had a few grey hairs. And she replied with, well, they must be very big ones because they cover the whole of your head, which I thought was a bit. I thought, where are you when your family are supporting you in that way? Isn't that tough?
Yeah.
Quite funny though.
How old's Freya now?
She's 5.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, she's enjoying school, which is good.
So we've got quite a few C3 Sicilian players, don't we, in this tournament? Because I know Audrey does. Canwell also likes the C3 Sicilian. And I know Sheila does as well, doesn't she? And
she certainly used to. I don't. Yeah, I mean, well, it's it's an interesting. It's pretty. I do think it's a pretty solid anti-Sicilian as well. And you're trying to find openings which don't require you to study a ridiculous amount of the time if you're not playing so often. So it's a reasonably practical suit, but I do think there's a couple of lines for black which are a little bit annoying. But I also know that some of the strong players find it a worrying thing to have to try to win with black against. They do think it's very solid.
That's true.
It's sort of
pretty solid. Yeah,
it is pretty solid. And there are actually games. There are some very exciting lines as well. But
yeah. I mean, you should see some of Canwell's games because, well, I know you have, but she often gets these really good kingside attacks.
No, I think there's fun to be had, but sometimes it requires a bit of cooperation from both players. Both players want a sharp position, then it's going to work really well. If one player wants to kill the game dead, then it's a bit trickier. So what does Olivia?
Got another Sicilian here. Knight F3, Knight C6, and another Bishop B5.
Another Bishop B5. As I said, I think this is a pretty decent anti-Sicilian.
And E6. So this is the same so far, isn't it?
So no, this is what I was.
No, A6 we had.
I didn't really approve of A6 all that much. E6 is one of the 2 or 3 main lines. Your main decision is: do you fianchetto that bishop, or do you send?
No point in James Sadler buying hair dye.
What was that?
Castles. Knight GE7.
Well, I don't know what Matthew's going to make of that.
I'm not going to comment anymore. Careful what you say.
Hair colour in men is a bit off. I don't know. Shocking. Okay,
I'll tell you who used to dye their hair. Ronald Reagan. He had like black hair, didn't he? Until he was like 85 or whatever.
No, but I mean, loads of people used to basically colour their, get rid of the grey, didn't they?
Yeah.
They still do, I'm sure. I mean,
oh yes, for sure.
Absolutely. I assume the so affable is Matthew rather than Ronald Reagan.
Although he was quite affable, wasn't he?
Well, in a certain sort of way. At the time, I was very, very hostile, but he did tell some good jokes, actually. Queen B6. This is interesting because after Knight C6, I was just looking at this position, and when you flicked it up just now, and after Knight takes C6, I was wondering if black wants to, can take on B5, but I'm not sure it makes that much sense, but it's
okay. So Queen B5 here, then
well,
White.
you normally think, how is Black going to take back the knight, and then you
Yeah.
realise that actually Black may not need to.
Yeah.
I mean, this is interesting because there are a number of positions in this kind of line where White gives up that bishop, not for any structural damage but largely for some development and some space. And I think after Queen takes B5, just knight back to D4 probably, you are going to get White is going to get a reasonable amount of that kind of space. But I think it's a not impossible line for Black. After knight takes C6, she's also going to play knight C3, defending the bishop, and then I suppose try and win a tempo on the queen with bishop E3. And after B takes or D takes, then you kind of think, why did you play knight queen B6? So I don't know. It's interesting. I have no idea. She has 4 plausible captures, I suppose.
I think I would take the bishop.
Well, I mean, it's certainly an option, isn't it? It's just that I don't know. I have seen quite a lot of these lines. So knight D4. Where would you go with your queen?
I'd go back again.
Back to B6. Okay, I'll just play knight C3 or something. I'm wondering if you then might need another tempo to stop me playing knight B5 in some cases, and then it starts to look like.
Okay, so you're getting quite a lead in development.
Then I might be getting a bit more of a lead in development. I mean, it may be that knight B5 is not that scary, in which case you might be able to. But you can see what I mean. You're sort of eyeing up D6 and C7 in some cases, and bishop E3 is coming. And I sort of think that would be okay for White. There were some lines with an early D4. White's playing like a sort of almost trying to get an open Sicilian without too much theory kind of thing. There were some lines in this where I thought White's development was quite decent compensation for the bishop pair. But then I suppose that's, as I said yesterday, it's back in the days when I was playing the Trompovsky, so I probably overestimated compensation for the bishop pair lots of the time. I don't know. It's a very interesting choice Sheila has here. And how long she spent? 16 minutes. Wow, she's finding it a very interesting choice as well then.
Yes, gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Fine. Right. Well, Sheila thinking about
the other slightly odd thing about that is that after Queen B6, do you think she was expecting bishop takes C6? Because something takes C6 looks pretty much forced by the fact she's taking the knight and attacking the knight and otherwise attacking the bishop on B5. So I think either bishop takes C6 or knight takes was necessary.
Yeah.
Maybe she was expecting bishop takes. I like knight takes. I think so. Because there will be some positions where if Black plays, for example, D takes C6, I think just bishop D3, I'd be happy with that for White just dropping back with the bishop. Although I think it's quite playable for Black too. But anyway, it'll be really interesting whichever way.
Yeah, and Olivia's still playing very fast, so maybe she does actually have.
Is she okay? Because that D4 in that position is slightly unusual to me. I mean, the position with castles knight E7, I've had several times with both sides, and I don't think I've ever played or faced D4. I think it's a bit unusual, but yeah, it's come out very interesting.
Yeah. So we've got lots of Sicilians today.
We have. Well, it's quite a good opening, the Sicilian. I mean,
yeah.
If you're playing 2800s, you might want to play the Berlin and try and make a draw. But if you're trying to have a game, the Sicilian's a pretty good choice.
So what have we got?
Fifth
game. Oh,
civilized rare variation. That's what we like to see.
Okay, so E4, E5 from Camwell. And Yaya plays knight F3, knight C6, bishop B5, A6, so Roy Lopez. Bishop A4, knight F6.
This is proper hardcore mainline Spanish. Roy Lopez, this one. It's
yeah.
Castles,
bishop E7. Rook E1, E5.
Yeah, I don't want to think about how many times I've had this position with Black and probably with White as well. Okay, so if you castle, then you're doing the sort of Marshall Gambit, and you can really do the Marshall Gambit, or you can bluff that you're going to do the Marshall Gambit. If you're not afraid of the main lines, then D6 is the better way to get them, probably.
Okay.
Because Black, obviously, once you've gone D6, White doesn't have to worry about you going D5 in most positions, although.
So H3.
So this is proper mainline stuff. And now the beautiful undeveloping move.
Knight
I love that move. I still love that move. I mean, I've sort of had mixed experiences playing it over the years, but I sort of love the harmony of it.
Where is it going? Knight to...
No, it's going to E7. It's going to support the E5 pawn without blocking the bishop, essentially.
Okay.
You sort of feel once you've gone a6 and b5 and you're going bishop b7, you sort of have a feeling that knight is slightly misplaced, which is why most of the main lines in this opening, it either heads to the queen side with knight a5 or something, or it goes back to b8. I like b8 to d7 because it gives you a better chance of holding. A lot of the closed Ruy Lopez is about holding that pawn on e5, and that knight gives you a much better chance of doing it. It's a pretty permanent defense of the e5 pawn.
Hi, Kevin. How's Reykjavik going?
Hi, Kevin. All right.
d4, knight d7, knight d2, bishop b7.
Can I answer Ocelot's question? Because it's an interesting question.
You can answer Ocelot's question, of course.
Except that the question is... Sorry, did he mean it the other way round? He said, why h3 before c3? Doesn't that give the opportunity to play bishop g4? I think, do you mean it the other way round?
Yeah, the other way round, he means.
I think the golden rule is that bishop g4 is a really useful move to put pressure on the d4 pawn as soon as white plays d4. But if white hasn't played d4, then bishop g4 is usually misplaced because white then just plays d3, knight d2, rook e1, knight f1, much as you were discussing they might do against the bishop in that Sicilian game. So bishop g4 tends not to be a good move when white hasn't yet played d4, because actually it doesn't have anywhere very good to go on the king side. It will get kicked by h3. Black doesn't want to give the bishop pair for nothing. When white plays with a closed center, h5 or g6, in this opening don't tend to be very good squares for that bishop. There's some classic old games. I think there might have been a game Nigel Short against Robert Hubner, where Hubner, despite his years of experience, played bishop g4 too early, and he got really heavily done in by Nigel. I'm sure Nigel would be delighted to tell us about the game sometime. It was a bit of a classic. But no, it's an interesting thing. White needs to deal with bishop g4 when playing d4, although obviously you can play 9d4. That's a line as well. But bishop g4 really changes the character of the play. But till white's played d4, bishop g4 is almost always inaccurate. I think that's probably true in the Italian as well, like 3 bishop c4. You don't see many very convincing early bishop g4s. But it is an interesting question, yeah. Okay, I hope it was a tolerable answer as well. Oh, can I just say, can we go back a couple of moves? I just want.
Yeah.
I had a game on against, I can't remember who.
Yeah, or back some more.
I've had loads of games in this position, but after knight bd2, now the engine says, the chess base says that I played rook e8 in this position. It is not true.
What do you mean it's not true? The chess base is wrong.
Yeah, chess base just got the order of moves wrong. It's bishop d7, and then you play rook e8. And can you see why you do not play rook e8 in this position, Natasha?
Rook e8 here
is a very bad move.
Is there some like knight g5 and bishop f7? Bishop f7 straight away?
Exactly, yeah. You've got bishop f7.
F7 straight away. Oh, gosh. And then knight e6 wins the queen.
Or someone was annotating the game, and he just casually says, rook e8, bad move, bishop takes f7. Well, did you really think I did that? I mean, I'm quite capable of blundering my queen, but not in a known opening. But there's also, the claim is out there, I think, that Boris Spassky did this against Judith Polgar, and that she missed bishop takes f7 check. And I'm similarly skeptical about that one as well. But I can't vouch for that one. I wasn't there. But anyway, black really needs to go bishop b7 first, which gives the queen a line of escape.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, Canwell knows it. Canwell knew it. That's good.
Clever. Oh, I mean bishop b7 is actually the more natural move anyway. You should know it, but you're more likely to not stumble into it, even if you don't. But now the other nice thing about it, because we said that the knight goes to d7 and it's defending the e-pawn without blocking the bishop. The first virtue of that is that now white can't do their knight f1 thing without defending e4 again.
Right. Yeah.
They've got two attacks on e4, so it forces the bishop off that scary diagonal to some extent. I mean, there are other lines, but by far the most common is to play bishop c2 to free up the knight to go about its business. And so that's another useful aspect of the Breyer. It forces white's bishop to retreat.
Yeah. Okay.
And now rook e8's all right.
E8 with no bishop f7 coming in at all.
With no loss of the queen.
Yes. Knight f1. Bishop f8. Knight g3. And Canwell stops this knight coming in, and she plays.
Yeah, this is the absolute main line after 14 moves. I mean, there are other more modern main lines. 30 years ago, maybe this was the main line. It was like, you will find thousands of games, probably hundreds for sure, starting from this position. A4 is the main line.
Okay.
But I think, did white play knight h2?
Knight h2, yeah.
That's a very interesting move. Now, one of the reasons a4 is the main line is that most of the other lines are supposed to allow black to break in the center with d5. But
Okay.
and this is one of them, I think, but it's quite complicated. I did it with black once without really knowing it, but just knowing I was supposed to go d5. And I realized during the game that I can't remember how it works exactly, but white can win 2 pieces for a rook in this position.
Oh, okay. D5. Do you want me to attempt an analysis?
I still have a feeling I'm not about to remember it.
Okay.
Sometimes you know that your brain is not about to run into action, but
yeah,
there is some. It was a game I played. Maybe this is a game which sticks in my mind for 2 reasons. One is that I thought, it turned out this knight h2 move had a lot more to it than I thought, and the other reason, unfortunately, is that having got this rook against 2 pieces position and thinking I was worse according to the engine wrongly, it just gives it as equal, as it often does. It's the only game I've ever lost by my mobile phone ringing. So.
Oh no!
Yes. So I defended for some hours. Well, I thought I was defending anyway. Got a position which was perfectly okay, and then my bank phoned me to tell me my credit card had been used my card had been used in Germany, which was unhelpful given that I was in Germany playing a game at the time.
Oh, so you'd used it.
So this was my bank costing me much needed income.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, that's a completely irrelevant story, but this is a knight h2. Yeah, it's an interesting move, but I can't remember. So the key question is whether black can play d5, but she didn't, no?
She's gone c5.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that because c5 is the main line after a4, but I think knight h2 is quite a useful move for white's stuff she'd like to do on the king side. If you get one of these block positions where black's playing, you normally play c5 in response to a4, and one of the things you have then is you can play c4, and white's b3 square is a little bit weak.
Right.
And if you go c5, c4 in the absence of a4, I'm not sure that's going to be so convincing. So I think white can block this up and then try to play on the king side. And I'm not sure black's going to be entirely comfortable with how much play she then has on the queen side. But of course, it's a minor, these are details. It's not clear that there aren't things black can do. But I think the usual approach with c4, knight c5 will lose a lot by white not having played a4.
Interesting.
Anything else, white can still play b3 and try and challenge those pawns. If the knight comes to c5, white can go b3 and say, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, and you just haven't got a square to land in as well on b3.
Yeah, exactly. Not having the square on b3 makes a big difference. So I'm not sure about c5 in this context. It's a little bit, a tiny bit mechanical.
Okay, and so white does close with d5 and camel
here is the c4, but as I say, it's lost something compared with the. Yeah. And now knight g4.
Knight g4.
Yeah, one thing white could try to do is try to play bishop g5 and knight g4, but I think any bishop g5 is met by h6 and white can't set that up. After knight g4,
bishop g5, h6, can't you just take?
Take the knight?
No, knight takes...
No, sorry. As soon as white plays just bishop g5, go h6 before... Yeah, no, if white got bishop g5 and knight g4 in, that might be a bit annoying. Although even then, bishop e7 might be all right. It depends how much damage the check on h6 does, really. But I think bishop g5 would have been met by h6. I think bishop g5 is sort of a threat here, but maybe knight h6 check is as well. Yeah. I think Camel will probably take that. And then the question is whether white's intending to take with the pawn and play something like g5 and try and get... You remember Bobby Fischer used to get those kind of initiatives on the king side back in the early... In the 60s and things. 60 memorable games. I remember all those kind of Rai Lopez games, which were always made it look pretty grim. On the other hand, if white plays h takes g4 after taking, I think black can just play bishop e7 to g5, and that would be fine.
So she has taken.
If black can trade the dark squared bishops without any hassle, okay, the bishop on b7 isn't exactly a great piece, is it? But bishop e7 to g5 makes sense as a defensive mechanism. So I'm not sure. She may take this with the queen.
Yeah.
Oh, well, another rich and
interesting game. Okay.
Plenty to see in this position as well.
Okay. Vagator Superfan, not making it up, talking Matthew Sadler on T-Sec Track, talking about Mike Gatting and his physique.
Yeah.
And hi, Zoram. Okay, we're going to switch to the other tournament.
Yeah. Oh, Chessbase spreading fake news. Yeah, I don't want this to become an attack on Chessbase. I'm sure the game. I've seen plenty of games with mistaken moves, but it was yeah, it was a bit.
Right, I'm just going to share my other screen to get the that one should be okay. So this is the She Plays to Win tournament, and we'll have a look at all the games on here. Oh, since I've got it up already, let's start with Zoe Varney against Hannah Goossens. And another Sicilian. It's a bit of a theme of the day.
Okay.
Oh, can you see it?
I'm not seeing that yet.
No, sorry. Let me do that actually properly so you can. Show on stream. There we go.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Zoe had a pretty nice position as black against Machtel this morning.
Okay.
And she kind of forced a draw when Danny commentating thought she could have gone for more.
Okay.
But
so Zoe's got 3 draws so far.
Yeah, I think she's. I think Danny's right that sometimes she's a little bit lacking in confidence at the final hurdle and kind of not unhappy to make a draw against stronger players.
Hey, I tell you what, Louise won the game yesterday. The game we were commentating yesterday, and I was worried about jinxing her. She did win.
No, she did win. Yes, she did.
Yes, so that's good. So we can safely watch her game today. I was going to think if she hadn't, then I'd
do the whole
without us this morning, broadcast without watching Louisa's game. But I think we're okay to watch it.
Natasha, she did win without our help this morning.
Without our help, she won, did she?
Or at least she took advantage of not having our hindrance.
She's on 2 out of 3.
She is.
Very good. We'll pop in there in a minute. But Zoe, let's see. Zoe's so E4. Thanks for the follow, Hubs KRT. C5, Knight F3, D6, and Zoe goes for main lines.
Yeah, D4, Zoe does indeed.
CD, Knight D, Knight F6, Knight C3, Knight C6.
The classical.
And F3 from Zoe.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've written a book about Bishop G5, so I used to know quite a lot about that. F3 is interesting. It's yeah, because it's a little bit different from F. All the time, these sort of positions invite comparison with the Najdorf, but are a little bit different. So White wants to set up a kind of English attack without allowing the fact that in this position, if you play Bishop E3 without F3, Knight G4 is actually rather a good reply. So
Pluku thought one was morally obliged to enter into the rouser if it was offered.
Well, no, it's sort of it's debatable. Moral obligation and chess openings, tricky. I would tend to play the rouser because I think it's the best thing as well as the moral obligation, but you have a point. Zoe's trying to play the English against any Sicilian. That may well be true, but yeah, she's got some where she might be advised not to try. But this one's okay, though, I think. This one's okay. But Black's main move is E5.
E5.
There are other moves, but E5 is...
Knight B3.
And then one of the advantages for Black of this over the Najdorf is that Black can try and hassle that knight on B3 by playing A5, A4. Okay. And obviously, if you haven't played A6, that involves a bit of a gain of time. On the other hand, you've lost the flexibility with where your queen knight goes. But another thing, if you play A5 and White plays A4, then Knight B4 can be a good way to try and get a quick D5 in. So there are a few. There you go. I've now told you everything I know about this position. But that's probably the most important thing that I knew.
So Bishop E6 and Bishop E3, and now Black gets in D5. So it's quite early getting in D5.
I don't remember if Bishop... Oh, no, I see. She's got D5 in straight away.
Yes.
By the way, I'm not quite sure whether Bishop E6 in that position, whether that's a position where White can consider Knight D5.
Oh, instead of Bishop E3?
Well, yeah, quite often, one of the things about Bishop E6 is obviously that when White plays Knight D5, Black loses the option of taking with the Knight, because then you're going to get your pieces forked. So
yes, indeed.
It may be that Knight D5 is a decent move. I'm trying to remember whether Bishop E6 was the way. I thought it probably you play Bishop D6 later. Because one thing you can do is flick in that a5 idea, and if white plays a4, then when you do take on d5 with the bishop and white has to support that pawn with c4, then you have a nice square for the knight on b4, if that wasn't too much gobbledygook.
Thanks for the follow, PB Marsh. Oh, I hope you're feeling fine, PB Marsh. Where do you find info about requirements for women's ECF titles?
Oh, wait a minute. These are FIDE women's FIDE titles, not ECF.
FIDE norm. Call you Marsh. Yeah, okay, we'll do Marsh. Yeah, so the ECF's organising. So norm requirements. So hasn't changed in the last goodness knows how many minutes. Thanks, Solomon Gilbert. Then for the women's IM norm requirement in general, you need a 2250 performance, and to get the title, you need 3 of those kind of norms, and also a rating of 2200. And within this tournament, because it's an all play all, then you can kind of work out at the start of the tournament how many points you need. And I did email Aga. She told me it was 6.5. I think 6.5 for the women's invitational and 6.5 or 7. Different players may have a slightly different points requirement.
These are for women international master norms,
yeah, to get women international master norms. So I think it's either 6.5 or 7 in this She Plays to Win tournament. Yeah, because it depends sort of who they all play, everyone except for themselves, if you see what I mean.
Yes. Yeah.
So the ECF, does it give out any titles? I think no titles. The one I don't know actually is how you get to. I know Women's FIDE Master is for an international rating of 2100 after you've played something like 30 games. Women's Candidate Master, like what Zoe's got, I'm not sure how you get to that one. I think it's still a FIDE title, though, isn't it?
I'm not sure. That's the one which
is it not?
Yeah,
don't
know
that
one. Maybe. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there, but I had a feeling that there was a British Candidate Master title or something at some point, but I may be wrong. No, it probably is still a FIDE title. I think on the whole, most of the titles. Because I mean, the titles are of much more use if they have kind of international recognition and international norms for what you require, I guess.
That's right, because within this tournament, you'll notice there are there is a requirement to have a certain number of international players, so it can't be all players from the same nation.
Yes.
And there's a requirement for a certain number of title players. So you'll notice like Hannah Goossens is WIM, and I think there's Sheila's a WGM. So you'll see there are a certain number of title players already in these, and people from overseas. Yeah. Okay. So Bishop E3, and
Kevin
then
just said that he gets frustrated because there are so few open Sicilians played by his opponents. He would like to play open Sicilians, but they all play boring old C3 stuff.
I sympathise with that.
I think a lot of people will sympathise with that. I think that's true. But I've done coaching with the England team, and half of them have been doing anti-Sicilians rather than mainlines as well. I mean, it's quite a widespread phenomenon these days.
Because everyone used to always do the closed Sicilian or the F4 Sicilian. We used to always do F4 Sicilian Grand Prix attack.
Yeah.
And then I think people changed to C3 Sicilian and closed Sicilian more now, isn't it? Doesn't Luke do that kind of thing sometimes?
No, well, Luke was doing F4 for some time. I mean, Luke and Gawain had extraordinary success against really strong international opponents with the F4 Sicilian, where their opponents basically didn't know things they really ought to have known. And it seemed that some openings just get much better known at a national level than an international one, I think. And for a while, the F4 Sicilian, people knew what to do in the UK.
Well, everyone in England used to know.
They went into international tournaments and sometimes got a lot of mileage out of it. But they're all these things are getting a bit better known now. But I still see that I sympathise. But on the other hand, you can't pretend that you play like McShane. No, okay, but it's all. I think for most, I mean, Gawain. One of the interesting things Gawain said when I interviewed him, I'm going to give my book a plug at this point, is that he wished he'd started playing open Sicilians at a much younger age. He regretted all this stuff with non-main lines in general. He said he thought it was a very good thing to, there was still enough mileage in the main lines, even with all the engines and everything, still enough mileage to do those. And they tend to, the thing is, they tend to be main lines for a reason. I mean, when I'm playing black now, some anti-Sicilians can be quite annoying. But now I've got old and it's harder to remember the theory. I tend to be more scared of the open Sicilians than the anti ones now. So. But yes, the open Sicilians can be a lot of fun, and I quite understand the frustration. Yeah, Cheparinov, that sounds familiar. Yep, that's one of the ones. As I said, pretty strong players getting baffled by the. So this one's very interesting as well, because I used to think that people sort of talk about how when you play D5 in the open Sicilian for black, you kind of, they sort of imply that you've then solved all your problems.
Yeah.
And this is sometimes true, but I think the reason it's often true is because you usually do it when white's committed to some heavy attacking on the king side. And then it works in terms of sort of striking back in the centre. I got a very early D5 in against one of the sort of Russian old school, Timoshenko or someone with really very good understanding of these things. And he showed me that, I thought that I'd equalized easily with this D5 and I was expecting an early exit. And then he showed me that there's actually still some definite problems for black in some of these positions where you've achieved D5. And the thing is, if white's played G4 and you can get away with D5, D5 is going to be great because there's going to be a weak F3 pawn, all that kind of thing. And the attack will be going nowhere because you've broken the center. But if you just exchange the E pawn for the D pawn, then the structure's not actually that different from what you might get in a French or a Caracan or something.
Yeah, because new positional Zoe will be happy enough with that. She won't feel the need, I think, to do a G4. She can just kind of play.
I imagine that she must have she must have been consciously allowing G5, because when people go bishop E6, you're usually weighing up whether they're going to be able to play D5 or not. I mean, I'm still fairly sure that's a position she could have gone knight D5 in, but bishop E3. I'm not entirely sure whether D5 will solve all of the problems. Maybe it will. But I predict that she'll take, and probably if black takes with the queen, then take, and castles long, something like that. And it may still be that black has a little issue or two to solve.
Yeah. Time control, by the way, is you get 90 minutes at the start of the game and then 30 seconds every move. So there isn't like an extra amount at move 40 or anything like that. It's kind of stays the same throughout the game.
Kevin just said everyone plays the London and the Jabava London. That's a very depressing
view
of the world. That is. I hope
we've seen one today, haven't we?
We've
seen lots of E4s and lots of Sicilians today.
That is true, but only one open one.
Yes, which is this one.
And here we go. Queen takes. It's all happening.
And the queens are coming off the board.
Oh, the new positional Zoe was too positional to castle long here. She's gone C3.
Oh, do you think she could have? Where would you?
Well, I would have castled long just to see what that bishop's planning to do with itself. Yeah, I don't see any urgent need for C3. I mean, it's a perfectly decent positional move, but black's not about to take on B3 and play on the dark squares or something. You don't need that pawn covering D4. So.
Yeah, C3.
Are they still playing quite quickly? No, not very much. Zoe's had quite a think, actually.
Zoe had a big think about taking the queen. She thought for 20 minutes before taking
the queens off. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Well, I mean, in principle, if you're going to have a long think, things like taking the queens off should be the really big decisions, shouldn't they? But I think it feels like probably the right decision there. Although maybe you can play with bishop D3 and just have a game. I don't know. Anyway, C3.
Castle's long.
Yeah, of course, if black can play sort of F5 and gain some space and get moving herself, then it's not only white who could have something to show in these positions, but yeah, I'm inclined to think as white I would definitely have castled long, because I don't think there's any danger there. And I think the king might be quite well placed on the queen side come the endgame.
Okay, so she's doing short castle, so opposite side castle.
Yeah, that surprises me slightly, but I don't. There's no objection to it either. I mean, the position is probably fairly balanced. Does the engine say 0.00?
Yeah.
Yeah, they like to do that just to lull us.
Not giving anything away.
No, that's right. I don't really believe them.
Yeah, F5.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing. I think if white doesn't interfere with black's setup, then that's the sort of thing black can try and do. That's why I thought Zoe should probably castle queenside and try and make some waves.
and knight c5. So he comes.
Okay. Well, that can be a weak square in black's position, but the king defends b7 quite adequately, and I guess white needs to be careful. No, I don't know. I can't. Not sure if there could be occasions where black could take that and actually play, deflect the bishop from the d file and try and invade with the rook. But I think that's quite difficult to do. But I'm not sure. Where's that knight headed? Is it going anywhere?
Don't know.
Maybe she wants to move her queenside pawns. Maybe she's got some b4 and a4 planned.
Yeah, I think that's what she's doing. Yeah,
perhaps. Which would be, of course, a coherent reason for castling kingside.
I suddenly thought if black takes it, then Zoe's exchanged off all her horses again. But
Yeah,
black
she's not
won't.
treating her horses with the requisite respect, is she? No, I was wondering if black can even sort of play f4 and then take it, and I don't think g5, g4. Oh, well, we can stop worrying about her taking it now. She's gone bishop
Yeah,
f6.
bishop f6, fine.
I'm not sure about bishop f6, but maybe she's trying to discourage b4 by reminding Zoe that she can have a bishop on that diagonal targeting those pawns. But, I mean, you've got to be careful when you're targeting pawns in front of your king.
Okay, so this one's, I guess, pretty balanced.
Is this it? Have we got?
This is where we're at. This is.
Well, they've actually made quite a few moves, haven't they?
Yeah.
Although I guess it is 4 o'clock now, so they should have made some moves.
Yeah. All right.
Hypocritically.
Let's see some more.
Well, I've always made that many moves by an hour into the game.
Yeah. You like a bit of a think in the opening, don't you, Peter?
No, I think actually I do. The vast majority of the thinking is just out of the opening. It's
out of the opening.
Just after the theory, and particularly if I've been surprised.
Right, we're going to look at Carmen against Lara. So 2 women international masters playing each other. I'm just going to check their scores.
This is another
Lara on 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
And Carmen on 1 out of 3.
Oh, did Lara win this morning?
Lara
did win this morning.
Did. She was playing Eugenia.
Yes, she had a huge opportunity just out of the opening, which she kind of let go. And then I was quite optimistic. The position I last saw that Eugenia might be able to hold. But
Okay.
Guess
what? It's another Sicilian.
It's another Rossolimo, isn't it? Another bishop b5.
Another bishop b5, yeah. G6 now. So this is different. So we've seen a6 and we've seen e6, and now we're seeing.
Oh, we've got g6 as well. Okay, we've had the full gamut of.
Had the lot. Yeah.
Pretty much.
And
bishop. You see, this is what I mean. It's not the only move by any means, but it's a respectable move.
Right. Yeah. I see your point.
And this is the position where black used to mostly play d takes c6, and now b takes has come much more into fashion.
Yeah, b takes c6 played by Lara.
And that's very relevant because I think, having just looked ahead to what happens in the game, I have a feeling that white plays the next few moves a little bit as if black had played d takes rather than b takes.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think you need to play quite differently against b takes, and strangely and paradoxically and quite interesting, you quite often play c3 and d4. So you're not trying to exploit black's double pawns. You're allowing them to exchange off and even opening the position up a little bit for the player with the bishop pair. But you're trying to show that you have space and development, and black's c6 pawn can be a little bit weak. And the way she
So why is it different with b takes and d takes?
For the very fundamental reason that we're going to see is that if black still has a d pawn, supports black playing the move e5. Black's aim in this position, I think, should be a King's Indian-y sort of aim, to play d6, e5, bishop g7, and f5, and then start motoring on the king side.
Right.
But if white doesn't play something with d4 or something, something chunky, to get in the way of that, I think that's a very pleasant plan for black. And that's, I think the way she plays looks very much like what you do against d takes. And I think Lara is going to get most of that plan in, and I'm going to like her position.
Okay. Did you know this about Rossolimo? Zoram says he worked as a taxi driver in New York City.
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that.
I might know what you do against b takes and d takes, but I didn't know I did not know that. Wow. So when was that? Do you know when that was?
That what? No, I don't.
Sorry. I was talking to Zoram, who gave us the.
Thank you for the follow. Okay. D3. So, okay, so this is what you say. So white normally would aim for
In the
D4.
50s. Wow. Okay.
In the
Gosh,
50s.
chess was. You can see what a good job Bobby Fischer did. Chess was clearly very tough in the 50s. Yes. Okay, so she's gone bishop. She said D6. Yeah, you see, I don't really like D3 by white. I think white could have gone C3 and D4, or could even maybe have tried to play rook E1 and try and get some E5 move in. But this, it feels like white isn't disturbing black's setup at all, which is why I think, white's playing the moves you play against d-takes, and I don't think they really work here. I mean, it's going to be, it's not going to be unplayable for white or something, but I think she's going to be a bit lacking in perspective. Right. Yeah, that's not a standard move. I can't accuse that of being sort of mechanical, but I'm not yet clear where it's headed.
Is she going for perhaps C3 and knight C2 and going for D4? But it's a much slower way of getting
That's
D4
possible.
in, isn't
I might have been inclined to dispense with D3 until I had to try and do it all in one go. I don't know. She may be, but yeah.
She might be going for knight C4.
But again, that sort of works better when you're attacking the e-pawn. But when the d-pawn is defending it solidly, it's not so clear what it achieves.
Yes, okay, I don't know. Knight A3, knight E7, bishop E3, castles. So black is getting this King's Indian setup in queen D2. So white's going to try and swap off.
Yeah, I think without queen D2, I'd be quite tempted to go H6 and maybe even G5 with black. So queen D2, I think it's important to stop that. But of course, queen D2 means that the knight on F3 is no longer defended by the queen. So black may have some sort of F5. And, well, F5 may threaten F4 anyway, but there may be some ideas with sort of rook takes F3 and bishop takes H3 or something, or the other way around if you're feeling materialistic. I think that there's already things I like about black's position. I don't know. Does the engine agree with me?
F5.
Mildly. The engine's not so impressed by F5. Of course, I've also had these positions and slightly overestimated them for black. It's possible to, overdo the narrative here, but I think...
Because I was thinking, wouldn't you stop? Wouldn't you try and stop white swapping off those bishops? Because one of your advantages as black is you got this bishop pair.
Well, I think you would, but I don't see how you would be able to, really.
Rook E8?
Oh, I see. I think I want F5 too badly to start going rook E8. I think this F5 counterplay is black's main idea, and rook E8 really doesn't help with that. Yeah, if you could go if you could play something where you could get F5 in and still keep... But if you get F5 in and keep that bishop and there's a bishop on H6, maybe that's a little bit hairy as well. I don't know.
I just thought maybe white played knight A3 in order to stop black playing C4 at some point.
Yeah, that's also possible. I mean, again, I don't think I want to go... I tell you why I don't want to go C4 with black here, because I think if you play D takes, actually with the knight on E7 and the bishop on G7, pawn on D6 could be very weak.
Okay.
And it's actually quite hard to defend. If you have a knight on F6, which can go to E8 or something, then it might be quite a different ball game. But I'm not sure. I don't think I want to open the centre. I think I really want to try and play on the king side. But I might be being too much of a thug. It may be that playing on the king side is not... I mean, another plan black could have looked at, maybe, I don't know what the engine would have thought, was playing F6 and G5. If you get F6, bishop H6, G5, then you might feel like you don't regret the exchange of those bishops so much.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You can incarcerate your own bishop. You make the opponent feel a bit stupid exchanging it off.
So F5. Excuse me. Now we've got a move the computer does not appear to like, which is pawn takes.
So this is an interesting point with the pawn on E5. Not sure the bishop on G7 is so powerful. There's some truth in that, but on the other hand, that's kind of the fact that the bishop on G7 still plays quite an important role. Kind of the whole basis behind why the King's Indian is such a good opening. It's sort of that bishop has sort of latent power. They used to say, in the King's Indian, they used to say that black should exchange that bishop off because it's not a great piece. But I used to find half the time when black did exchange that bishop off, they then missed it for covering some of the squares behind all those pawns when they were attacking. It's very complicated, that bit.
Do you know, it's not obvious to me now. You know, like normally.
Chess teaches you to control the initial excitement you feel when you see something that looks good and trains you to think objectively when you're in trouble. This is true. I just wonder whether I was getting too excited about what was going on the king side and whether I'm being told off, possibly very justifiably.
It's not obvious to me which way you recapture, because I know every Russian schoolboy knows to retake with the pawn. But actually, you could retake with the knight here, alternatively, couldn't you? And you're then you really are stopping that exchange. Thank you for the follow.
I still think it's debatable how much the exchange is.
Whether that's something to black is even worried about.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about that exchange. I mean, you could take the bishop and threaten bishop takes h3 as well. Any of these things are possible.
All sorts of possibilities. So why is this so good for black then?
I'm not saying it's so good for black. I just don't. Okay, so one way to think about why something is good for black is to say, okay, if you're white, what's your plan?
Yeah.
I mean, I think I feel like I like it for black because I can articulate a plan for black, and I struggle to do that for white.
Yeah.
And actually, a lot of the time, that's a component part of being better in a position, isn't it? You know what you want to do. I mean, I often say to my students, if you had 5 moves in a row here, and obviously I don't mean like taking pieces.
Thanks for the follow, Caravan.
You know, if you have sort of 5 positional moves in a row, what would you try to achieve in a position? And I kind of think that if you can't answer that, then there's probably something slightly wrong with your position.
Yeah.
You kind of ought to know what you want to do. And I don't know, in this position, I don't really know what I want to do with white. On the other hand, when black plays moves like f5, good though I think they are, they also open up, plans for both sides, I suppose.
Sure, it's suggesting g4.
That is. In which moment, I wonder?
I guess not if pawn takes.
Oh, if knight takes you. Oh, if bishop takes you, could go g4.
Bishop takes
you. And if pawn takes you, could go g4.
Yeah, no, but you can't go g4, can you? Because takes, and then rook takes knight.
I'm pretty sure as black here, I want that g file. I think the Russian schoolboys are right in this position.
You're going to take with the pawn?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I sort of very much sympathise with Lara thinking about it because there are real possibilities, but, real options here. But I think I'd go with the pawn still.
Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's have a look at the next one. And when we come back to this, you're betting on the pawn and I'm betting on the knight, okay?
Oh, you're betting on the knight? Okay.
Yeah, I'm betting on the knight. In fact, let's look at the computer. The computer says the pawn, and then the knight, and then rook b8. Yeah.
And then rook b8.
And then rook b8. The bishop doesn't.
Yeah, we didn't have that one covered.
We didn't, but that attacks another pawn on b2, so there's another angle. All right, we're going to look at Louise against Eugenia.
Louise has come to life, I think. I think Louise she seems to be storming the last couple of rounds in spite of our coverage of her games.
In spite of our coverage. Excellent. d4.
Yes.
d5, c4, e6, knight c3, and bishop e7 to a quiet line from Eugenia. Knight
yes, I know. What was the other game we saw with her? She was playing some... Oh, yes. No, that was a French, wasn't it? That was a French.
That's right, yeah. Knight f6, bishop g5, h6. So kind of queen's gambit declined.
Yeah, this is going to be a Tartakova, I think, which is, I think, one of the most decent queen's gambit declines for black of the sort of, I mean, maybe if you're desperate to make a draw, then maybe the old Lasker defense is a decent way, but b6 is the one with some life in it. b6 is what Nigel Short played for many years. We're about to get to.
Okay.
This is one of Nigel Short's weapons.
Okay. e3 and b6.
Okay, so the most interesting one-sentence insight I can try to give to this position is that white often plays a move that waits for black to play bishop g7, bishop b7 rather, and then we'll play bishop takes f6 and c takes d5 when black's bishop is on. Because b6 sort of has 2 roles.
Yeah.
It prepares the fianchetto, but it also prepares the move c5. And actually, sometimes for the purposes of playing c5, the bishop would be better on e6. So if white plays bishop takes f6 now and then c takes d5, black will sometimes follow up with bishop e6. So white often plays a waiting move to encourage the bishop to go to b7 and then does something like that. The alternative is to do what I think white does here and take on d5 when black can take back with the knight. And then, but there too, there might be some positions where black is better off with the bishop on e6 than b7. I mean, some of that stuff goes right back to the Fischer-Spassky match, I think.
So yeah, she does. Louise takes.
Yeah.
And takes here, takes on d5.
Oh, takes on d5. That I don't.
I was expecting takes on a7. Yeah.
That's the normal move, but there may be some. What would be the wrinkle here? I can't see what you're looking. Oh, maybe after e takes, she wants to go. No, after e takes, she's going bishop e7. So then I'm not sure why you. Maybe you're just giving black an extra option, which isn't very good.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't. For example, bishop takes h4 is just not a very good move.
Okay.
Although it's not blindingly obvious to me why that is, but I'm sure.
Knight c7?
Well, then bishop takes f2 check. I'm not sure how bad that is, but maybe that is, maybe there's some reason why that's bad. Okay, but they're going to get the same position anyway. It's just interesting. Sometimes, of course, people usually assume it's wrong to give your opponent extra options, but if they're bad options, it can be not
indeed.
Bad.
Yeah, I did a bit of a study on when we were looking at AlphaZero on that, and AlphaZero does give the
it gives the opponent bad options all the time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bishop e2, bishop b7, rook c1, c5. Okay, Pluku says this is exactly the line from Fischer-Spassky.
I thought that black had the bishop on e6. I'm pretty sure black had the bishop on e6 because then white played bishop b5 trying to stop the knight from developing, I think.
Oh, yeah, he played bishop e6. Yes, you're right.
That sounds a bit nerdy that I know that. But
yeah, I'm very impressed.
Good. I've got to impress people occasionally. Doesn't happen very often.
We've got penguins. I think we've got penguins. There we go, in the chat. Very nice. I like penguins.
I like penguins too, I saw.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, c5 castles.
Owls are the other thing.
Knight d7 and queen a4.
Okay, yeah, so sometimes...
Now Eugenia played this... I think Eugenia did an f5, an unexpected f5 yesterday.
You know the first thing this tells us, don't you, Natasha?
Oh, no, what?
The first thing this clearly tells us is...
She's a cave woman. They used to always call me cave woman for moving my f-pawn too early.
Eugenia doesn't listen to our commentary, I think.
She doesn't listen to our commentary, Eugenia.
She's missing a trick.
Oh!
Now, as a result of not listening to our commentary, she's played the same shaky move 2 days in a row. Yeah. I don't like that move at all. I mean, surely if you're going to play that move, you want to have a dark square bishop. Just to control those squares, weak squares you're creating. And I don't know, I can see why you might... I mean, it just seems like a misplaced optimism for attack. And I think that bishop a6 is a good reply because the d-pawn's going to be weaker. I mean, basically, the knight is going to have to go to f6 to defend that d-pawn at some point. And then you're inviting white's knight into d5, e5, and that shouldn't be an outpost. You shouldn't let that be an outpost. I mean, I think bishop b5 is probably a good move here as well. Yeah. And bishop a6 is bishop b5 or bishop a6? I don't know. But, I mean, she's kind of threatening f4, but all white's decent moves don't allow that. So it's sort of difficult to see what she would realistically want with f5. No, that's definitely a move for her to think about with her.
Dave Norwood still calls me cave woman, even after all these years.
And you're sure that has to do with the f5 move?
Yeah, it was all to do with I would play f4 or f5, and that was why he called me cave woman.
Yes.
Precisely why.
It was probably a compliment, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't.
I think so. Yeah, it's sort of. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think this is sort of. I think it's a little. I think you have to sort of be a little bit hard on Eugenia here, just in terms of the realism of this plan. I don't think this kind of attack is going to work with all these pieces gone. I think d5 is too weak. For example, after... Okay, I don't think I want to go in with queen b7, but
I was looking at Queen B7. Yeah.
I think Black can play Queen E6, but I think we want to attack D5, and I think it's going to then be quite. Also, I mean, it's also true now that if D takes C5, Black would have to take back with the knight,
Well,
because
Maurice naturally does caveman chess as
H6
well.
hangs, which is.
Sorry.
Why do you play the Queen's Gambit declined? Who was that addressed to?
That's to Eugenia. F5.
Oh, Eugenia. No, it's a reasonable question for her, I think.
Oh, sorry. So you're saying if white takes on C5, then
Well, if Black takes with the pawn, I think H6 is hanging, which is
no,
a
you're
sort of
right.
sign that
You're
G5 is a bit extravagant, isn't it?
And if you take with the knight, well, the queen has to move first.
Well, I mean, then it might be that's presumably what she's intending to do, and hoping that she gains enough time, and that's not the world's worst IQP. But if you're this aggressive, then the question is quite right. Why do you play the QGD if this is your style?
She should play the Dutch. That's what I moved on to after all this stuff.
Although
Dutch.
that
is pretty bad.
I was working with Julia Volovich, who another of the sort of talented young female players, and she had the right style for the Dutch, but somehow after a while, I still didn't feel the Dutch was really working in her favour. It's not.
Blue Cruz suggested the Dutch as well, but actually, you could.
To be honest,
you can.
I don't know if maybe this is just a moment she's having. Maybe this isn't exactly a reflection of her style. But if you are very aggressive, I'm still quite a big fan of the King's Indian.
King's Indian. I was just about to say that as well. Yeah,
King's Indian's got a lot going for it. If you're aggressive, I mean that's why people.
Eugenia, learn the King's Indian. That's what.
Well, steady. I mean, I'm pretty sure she's on the accelerator program.
Okay,
and that's why I'm pretty sure she's getting some of this kind of advice already. But
didn't Gawain write some really good book on the King's Indian?
Gawain wrote very good chessable courses on the King's Indian.
Eugenia, learn the King's Indian and study Gawain's chessable courses. That's our advice.
And play the birds with white.
She's going to win this game now, though, isn't she? And then she definitely won't.
Probably not. I think she's gone. I think this is a bit extravagant, but okay. I'm not sure. Has white moved yet?
No, Louise
White is in shock at the aggression of her. I mean, I think it's great when players are very aggressive. I think it's. I think probably even particularly when I'm working with girl players, I'm very, I like it if they're very aggressive.
Yeah.
Because I think traditionally it's been.
Have you read Jen's book, Jen Shahadi's book?
I haven't read her book.
Really good. You haven't? Read it because it's really good. But she was saying actually quite a few girls, herself included, and I think myself as well, play ultra aggressive and are maybe overcompensating for the fact everyone assumes you're not going to play aggressively.
Well, but
Judith was very aggressive
there's
as well.
There's definitely been a change over the years. Yeah. I mean, I think, probably the two best young junior girls I've worked with in the last few years, which was Julia and Nadia Jafar Ali. They were both very aggressive, I think. Yeah, they both had a really good attacking. It's not
that unusual for female chess players that have.
Yeah, maybe. Well, it's a good thing. That is a good thing, I think. But of course, we're seeing it here. It needs a little bit of balance and perspective as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, learn positional chess as well. That's probably what I did not do.
I'm sorry, Gawain's course has been released as a book as well, apparently.
I thought so. Yeah.
Ah, I didn't know that. Okay. Oh well, yeah. I mean, any stylistic thing you make about any type of player, there's going to be
Humpy, how you can not.
Yeah, Humpy is not. I don't know. I've seen her play aggressively as well, but
yeah.
Okay, so I don't hugely like this for Black. I think she's just got a bit excitable.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll come back.
But I like the spirit behind it, and I do actually think. I mean, I think I've seen games from her before that led me to wonder if she might not be playing the right openings, but.
Yeah, well, I suppose she's a very young player. She's still kind of establishing her style and.
Well, I mean, it's also great when people play if they have the time to learn them when they play more than one opening. But
that's true.
Of call, of course. It's a lot of work.
Yeah. Okay, Louise did in fact take on C5, like we were thinking.
The knight takes, and that's where we're at, I think. Yes.
Yeah. And so then Louise presumably will drop the queen back somewhere and then put a knight in on D4, perhaps.
I'm fairly confident about both of those things. I'm very confident.
Then I imagine Eugenia's going to play F4 at some point. Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to this one. Righty, let's see. Here we have Daria against Alessia. Okay. D4, knight f6, c4, e6.
I think Daria had a tough morning, as I remember.
Okay, so Daria.
How is Alessia doing?
This morning? Yeah. And Alessia, we might not see it on the screen. Alessia won against Eugenia and then lost Lara Louise.
No, she was the player in Louise Head's rather convincing game this morning.
Yeah.
Okay, so these players both need a good afternoon.
Knight c3. And takes.
Ah, proper stuff, Vienna. Fun.
E4.
Okay, so in this position, White can play Bishop G5 or can play what occurred in maybe the last 15 years or so. Bishop takes C4 became a viable alternative, just sacrificing a pawn immediately. Knight takes and castles with lots of fun to be had.
Interesting.
I remember having to face that over the board when I'd never seen it before once, which was a bit slightly alarming. And I think I played quite a bad line, but ended up with quite a decent position and then we made a draw. But it's a scary thing if you don't know what you're doing. But Bishop G5 is still the main line.
Bishop G5, she's gone for the main line.
Yeah.
C5.
Okay, I think there are other moves that people have started playing in all these, but this is the main stuff still.
Yeah, and Bishop C4 now.
G4, yep.
So Pluko is saying about a Carlson-Aronian game with Bishop C4. Excuse me.
Ah, okay, yes. I mean, that line's, I'm sure it's taken some good, serious victims over the years.
C takes, knight takes D4.
So, I mean, Black's entire strategy here really is revolved around the fact that Queen A5 hits the bishop and the knight. It doesn't sound very sophisticated, but yes. that is the essence of this position, is that Queen A5. And Black can play Bishop takes C3 first, or they can play Queen A5. Queen A5 first, maybe. I don't know if it's slightly safer. It's not even clear to me. I think Bishop takes C3 certainly came first. It's more forcing, because after Queen A5, White can play moves like Bishop D2.
Yeah.
Which help to keep the thing under control. So if you play Bishop takes C3, B takes Queen A5, White doesn't have so many simple moves that meet the threat.
Yeah, well, this has been played actually, and
yeah, this is
so Black is hitting the pawn on C3, hitting the bishop.
Hundreds of games with this, yeah. So
yeah.
White's got three moves: taking F6, Bishop B5 check, or Knight B5. I don't think there's anything else that meet the two threats really.
Yeah. Okay. And so have you got like bishop? So bishop takes F6. Black will double. Oh, can't you just throw in?
Well, bishop takes F6. You throw in Queen takes C3 check.
Yes.
And White has to play King F1. But then it's probably a mistake to take a bishop with check, which is always good fun, because after King G1, then if you take back on F6, Rook C1 skewers the Queen.
Oh, nice, nice.
So Black takes on C3 and then takes back on G6.
Okay.
And then for years, No, I'm about to say something I'll regret that. I can't remember. But White's most common mode of development in this position is probably, in those lines, is H4 and Rook H3 at some point.
Right.
That's the efficient. Nice. Once you've gone King F1, that's the way your Rook comes into the game.
Yeah.
And it comes in pretty fast and scarily. I mean, for years, I thought Bishop B5 check was probably the scariest of the three moves. And then Black actually has a choice between Bishop D7 or Knight BD7. And Knight BD7 super sharp. I lost a horrible game to Mark Hebden a few years ago where he just had learnt the theory and I'd kind of forgotten it. And I'm now in a state where I can't even remember what the theory was that I'd forgotten. I can't remember whether it was Bishop takes F6 or Bishop B5 check. Because I used to know this line very well for Black and I made very good score for years. And then I just got to the point where it's probably a line that you need a very good memory for, and I might have reached the point where it's gone.
What you'll get, Peter, what people say, and what I've also found myself, is at some point you forget all the lines you've learned as an adult and start remembering the ones you used to play as a kid.
Oh, I've already done that. I mean, I had a game in the 4NCL maybe a year or so ago, 2 years probably. There probably weren't any games a year or so ago. And I just couldn't remember any openings of what I'd learned recently. So I went back and played, the Zaitsev variation of the Spanish or something, just because it's the only thing I could remember. And we ended up with some position from the Karpov-Kasparov matches from the 1980s, and I felt quite at home.
Oh, wow.
But, you can't guarantee your opponent's going to go down that way with you all the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can remember stuff, but I need to have looked at it more recently than was the case.
I think looking at it even briefly, but quite, not too long before the game, then that really
it does help.
Can bring it back.
You've got to do it the right way as well. I mean, sometimes you're looking at the lines and you can learn the lines quite deeply and, understand them and everything. But then when you get to the board, you realise there's some moment quite early on where you can't quite remember the move order or something. Because you know the sort of position you're aiming for, but there may be some. Those sort of things. I think you need to learn, because it's very tempting to start looking at a key position at move 12 or something.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's
which
important to
assumes
remind
you
yourself
could get
how you
to
even
move
get
12.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of pitfalls when you reach a certain age, I think. I mean, as you can see, I still know a certain amount of stuff, but it's it's difficult to dig it up sometimes.
Yeah.
Knight b5 is also. I mean, all these moves require black to be quite precise. Now it looks very scary, but knight takes e4. Is that what she did?
Oh, Zoram's saying he's got your DVD on strategy, but no longer has a DVD player.
Ah. Yeah, I imagine that's quite a common
Bit of a problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Don't computers mostly? You can still get sort of external DVD players for computers and things, can't you? But
yeah,
I think on the whole, DVDs are a bit.
I think I've got one in my car, but that doesn't really help too much. No. Knight e4.
I was told that this DVD has continued to sell a little bit over the years, which I was quite pleased with that. But of course, yes, an absence of DVD players will probably not do it a lot of favors. So knight takes e4. This is an example of where you really, really, really need a memory to remember all the theory. So I'm pretty sure white goes queen d4.
That's what she's done.
Because knight takes g5 is then met by queen takes g7, I guess.
This is really sharp, isn't it? This
it's incredibly sharp. You've really got to know your stuff. And what black does here is what is the thing that I kind of remember being out there, but I don't remember the details. At some point, you're going a6 and castles.
Yeah.
And then you're relying on the fact that c3 is on prise. This all feels right.
Yeah.
So but I can't recall the details. I mean, in a position like this, you need to check that white can never flick in a bishop d3 or a bishop e7 or various things. It's an absolute minefield unless your memory is right up with it.
A6.
Okay, the other thing about a3, sorry, you're not just relying on c3 being on prise. There's the queen is sort of attacking the bishop through the knight as well.
Yes, sorry, yes. So if that knight drops back, the bishop on g5 is on prise.
Yeah, bishop e7. I'm not even 100% sure I might not have had this position.
Yeah, Frenchie's point. That's actually an interesting point from Frenchie that Alessia has used only 10 minutes and Daria's used over an hour. So black very booked up in this position.
So I mean, first thing to say is that although it's not great news for her, she's doing quite well to find all the moves in that case.
Yeah.
But I guess that she's in that state that I'm sometimes in where
Thanks
you sort of
for the follow,
not
Sujit Kamachapati.
So this bishop e7 to b4 is quite logical, but I have a sort of suspicion.
Do you think this is still theory then right now?
I mean, it's not by any means the only line, but it's still theory, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And as I say, I've had something very similar against Nick Pert in a rapid game years ago.
Okay.
In fact, one of the rapid games where I won the British Rapid Play, I think.
Oh, congratulations.
Back in the day when I used to be able to play quickly sometimes.
Yeah.
And yeah, black's. I'm certain that black is. Actually, am I certain? I think I'm certain that black is right to just take on b5. Well, otherwise you wouldn't be winning your piece back, so you must.
Yeah, and so black started thinking really just around here. So this is perhaps back's now out of theory as well.
So I think if white takes the rook, black just. Oh no, black might just
take the bishop.
Might have several.
Or taking on c3.
Or taking on c3. Yeah, I'm sure one of those two is good. Maybe both.
Yeah, because you could take on c3 and then queen takes bishop, maybe.
Yes.
And that ends up as 2 pieces for a rook, doesn't it? If that all works.
No, it doesn't, because the bishop's going to be able to run away.
Ah,
If you could take everything, it would, but white gets a move to run away with the bishop.
yes.
So that would actually be an exchange sack for 2 pawns, and I'm not sure
No,
what I
okay.
think about that one. But taking on c3 and then taking on f8 is also possible, because
Yeah.
oh no, then rook c1, and if the queen, maybe just take. I suspect that just taking on f8 immediately might be the best move. Honestly, I can't remember, and I'm not sure I'm about to work it out. But it doesn't feel right for white to do that. It doesn't feel scary. Bishop b4.
Yeah.
Feels like
Luke
the
was
move.
asking if you've played. Sorry, Hoopskirt has asked, have you played Wolfram Schön?
Wolfram Schön. There I am talking about my memory, and then people ask me difficult questions
Well, it's tests, yeah.
requiring it to be a lot better than it is. I may have done. Can I ask why you're asking that question? Because it's not very general, is it?
It might affect your answer, yeah.
Yeah, I might.
Queen c7.
If you know the game in which I lost horribly to him, then I will be careful how I answer. Right.
Okay, bishop takes now, king takes, and bishop d3.
Oh, okay, so this is a very similar position to what we might have got anyway. So black only has 1 pawn for the exchange at the moment, and h7 might be on pre sometimes. Queen takes c3 check's obviously quite tempting. Black probably needs to have knight c6 coming quickly so that the rook isn't going to sort of enter the game on the c file or something.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
queen takes c3 check, king e2, knight c6 or something, and then if rook c1, you have queen b2 check, and then you're ready for rook c2. You have knight d4 in mind, so something. Like
yeah, that looks nice.
This feels quite pleasant for black to me. Although, yeah, I don't know. I'm not getting any details on the Wolfram Schön. No. Oh, queen c3, king e2, rook a3, but wouldn't rook h c1 cause what Spess would call an accident at that point? Because I'm worried about the skewer with the bishop.
Can't you then go rook a2?
You might be able to. And then I might ask why you bothered to go rook a3 in the first place. But king f3 might be all right as well. Well, it's all a bit radical, isn't it? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really want to exchange black's queen for 2 rooks, I don't think. I feel a bit pretty bad accident, yes.
Okay, queen c3 she has played. King e2.
He's a 2400 plus player that played in UK around 2000s.
Don't know.
Ah, okay. No, I don't think I do. The name sounded vaguely familiar when I first read it, but I'm not certain. And if it was, I thought it was somebody I might have played in Germany or Austria. So I'm suspecting that I don't. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, so this has happened. This is the position where I was saying maybe knight c6. Well, it's another very interesting position. I mean, yeah, I think these lines are still some fun for black, but you need to know your stuff very well.
Yeah. Let's look at
anyway, that's quite impressive. I mean, some quite serious theory from both of them, really.
Oh, yeah.
Even if white was having to sort of dredge it up a bit.
Yeah. Okay, we already looked at Zoe and Hannah.
Oh, so have we now seen everybody?
No, because we haven't yet seen Ellen against Mashtelt.
Yes.
So let's see it. D4, D5, C4.
So I think I'm not being unfair to her in saying that. Did Mashtelt win on time this morning?
I didn't see.
I think that she had a very dubious position. Then she escaped from all the dubious stuff. And
no, it was a draw this morning.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm confusing her with somebody else. I apologize. No, she had a game with Zoe in which actually I think Zoe was slightly better, but it was a very interesting game. And no, I'm confusing her. I'm so sorry. Okay, details. So sharp Catalan stuff. This is all good stuff. Then it becomes less sharp, but actually relatively comfortable for black, I think. So now a6.
Cuckoo Machteld is related to Jordan and Lucas. She's their sister, younger sister.
Yeah, she is their younger sister. Okay, so for the first time, can I just say quickly that the last few moves, I think if black had played b5, white had knight takes, but white's now taken on c4 because at that moment black's threatening b5, knight takes, knight b6, defending the rook, and then taking out the knight.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to do it? Yeah, okay. Was that? Hopefully everyone got that.
Yeah, I got it, and I can't do arrows. Thanks
but
for
I
the
think
follow.
I think this is very comfortable for black because I think that knight on c3 would probably rather not be there yet. And I think when black goes b5 and bishop b7, white won't be able to go e4 because of b4 by black. And I think black was coming with c5, and it's one of those Catalan positions where if black gets everything right like that, I think black's already. I mean, it might be sort of equal, but I think black's really slightly better already.
Thanks, Screws. Machteld won on time in the second game yesterday.
This is indeed what I was thinking of. Yes, and she had a bit of a rough ride getting to that position. Although she was slightly better, I think, when she.
Oh, she was worse, wasn't she? Though in the game when we saw it, yeah.
No, I mean she's on 2.5 out of 3, but honestly, I think she's a very good player, and we haven't yet seen the best of her.
Yeah.
But those days when you can play not your best and be on 2.5 out of 3, they're always really good. They're always really good. So
b5, queen d3, bishop b7, bishop f4, c5.
So far, so good. This is exactly what I was expecting her to do. And knight takes, and then that queen. White probably will have to take the queen because the white queen doesn't have anywhere very exciting to sit, I think.
Yeah, so she takes it. Rook takes. Rook c1.
And you've got so many of these Catalan endgames where black would rather not have played b5 and b5. Those squares around b5 are a very slight weakness. But in this one, it feels like b5 is just gaining space and just adding to black's position.
Because black looks comfortable here, right?
Black's super comfortable. I think black's slightly better. I think it's difficult. I think white would probably rather have the knight somewhere else or needs an extra tempo or two. I think black feels like there ought to be something. I mean, maybe it's only nominal. Maybe it's only psychological, human stuff, but I'd rather be black here for sure.
Rook c8.
c8.
b4.
Okay, well, that's you see, that kicks the knight out of one good square and gives it another good square. Now the c4 square will be the target of black's operations, I think. So knight d7 to b6 to c4 is what I would expect here.
Knight d7 played, yes.
Yeah. No, then it's sort of. And now white has to defend the b4 pawn. But when white plays a3, then whenever that knight comes to c4, it's also hitting the a pawn, and that's the
knight. So that knight can get into c4 much easier than a white knight can get to c5.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. So. That is the point. By the way, now this is a very clear illustration of where white's knight would be better on d2. Then there would be essentially no difference between. Although even then there's a slight difference because black's bishop on e7 defends c5, whereas white's bishop is on g2. So c4 would still be an even weaker square just because the bishop's out of the way. Does that make sense? I think that's true, isn't it? That sounds right. It may be right. It's how I would understand the position. It may or may not be right. I don't. It makes sense to me. Knight b6. Yeah.
95.
So I don't know. When you exchange those light squared bishops, psychologically for me, the weakness on c4 becomes even more sort of defined. But that doesn't mean knight e5 is a bad move. Maybe white will try to show something with the c6 by trying to get that knight to c6 or something. I mean, there are.
Yeah, so takes, and this is where we're at.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not that exciting, but I think it's worth thinking about why black is probably a little bit better.
And it's all around the c4 square, right?
It is primarily the c4 square. So that move is easily explained as removing a defender of the c4 square.
Yeah.
So after knight takes, rook takes. Black can then use the c4 square straight away. So there's no tricks.
How important do you think the c4 square is, right? Because say black does get the knight in, knight c4, I was just going to say white play a4. You can't, though, can you? Because the bishop's.
I think on
attacking
the
the
whole, you're going to
people.
be likely to lose a pawn. I mean, if you can do
Yeah.
it, then you probably do. But I don't think it's easy to do.
Yeah.
I suspect that black's position isn't quite as good as I think it is, because I think these positions with really good squares are the ones which humans and me as a in particular tend to overestimate slightly. And you and Matthew working with Alpha Zero and stuff, you probably
Mm.
see more occasions where they kind of think, "Pah, this isn't that important." But to me, that's
Well,
quite
they always
important.
say have a like even though you've got one weakness, you have to find a second weakness.
Yes. Well, knight c4 might threaten g5. That's not a weakness, but it's a.
You have played Wolfram, Peter. The
Oh,
chat
the
is saying
Arnold
in
Cup.
Gal style.
Ah, that might be the. I'm not sure if that's the Grunfeld which went very well against Stefan Moore, or the one which I think that's the one which went horribly. I don't want to be reminded of that one. That's the one where I thought I was worse when the engine thinks I'm much better. You see, that's what.
Hoopskirt, you can only talk about this if Peter won the game, okay?
No, it's not quite as egotistical as that, but yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I think black's a little bit better, and I think Machteld is playing it's a textbook attempt to illustrate why black's a little bit better. I mean, it really is. It's everything you would expect from a book on
Very
weak
strategic game then from black here.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Should we pop back to the other tournament? The
Yes.
the women's ECF Invitational.
I wonder if that might be an occasion for a 5-minute break, actually, because
Oh yes, let's do a
probably
5-minute
ought to
break. Okay, so I'm going to leave
my
it.
legs.
I'm going to switch screen. You can hop off, Peter. I'm just going to switch to the other screen, and we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back very shortly. So,
Great, thank you. Okay.
Go. Hi, hi there, Peter. We're back.
Hi.
Hello, and we've got Canwell against Yao Yao. So let's go back to there.
Interesting.
There we go. And now, can you remember where we left the game before?
Yes, we left at knight g4. What black had just played knight takes g4, and white was
Knight g4. We had.
And I was just saying that I thought if h takes, then bishop e7 to g5 would be good for black.
Yeah.
So that makes sense of why she went queen takes, I think.
Yeah, and Yao Yao played queen takes g4.
Yep.
We had knight f6, queen f3, and h6, stopping the bishop coming into g5.
Yes.
Bishop e3 and bishop g7. A4.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was saying that I thought that, black's playing c5 and c4 didn't make quite so much sense when white wasn't committed to a4. But on the other hand, now there's a pair of knights exchanged, and the knight that usually comes to c5 is over on f6. I don't know how strongly that argument applies anymore. I mean, one of the tricky things about the Breyer is that sometimes, as well as sort of hinting at some play on the king side, white gets some play on the a file as well by playing in this structure, doubling rooks and trying to take on a b5 at the right moment. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. I feel like black might be missing that knight coming to c5, but on the other hand, you kind of feel like in a position where black's a little cramped, one exchange of minor pieces should be not a bad thing either. So interesting. So I think white's probably looking at, we can see she is looking at rook a3 and rook ea1 and threatening to do something.
She's done it, yeah. Rook e8 takes.
Oh, I don't know why she took. I thought, she's taking to play a bishop a.
She's doing bishop a7.
Yes. Do you remember the old classic? Is it Karpov Unzicker, isn't it? That bishop a7, where Karpov just plays his bishop to a7 to sort of mess up black's piece coordination. It's a classic Spanish thing which you see in lots of the textbooks.
So Yao Yao's playing the Karpovian bishop a7.
I'm not sure it's such a Karpovian bishop a7. The engine doesn't seem very impressed. Did black miss something here? I can't see immediately what it might be. Do
you have a tactic?
No. I just thought I'd say to make you think I did.
Are you talking about bishop d5 and rook a7?
Well, I don't think anything like that really works.
Doesn't actually work.
Because you can take on b8, and I don't think there's a...
Yeah.
But I'm quite intrigued what was the problem. I was also wondering if there's some occasion where black can flick in b4 and get some play on the file when white's not coordinated. But if the rook's having to leave the b file, that doesn't seem very likely either.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to scroll down slightly. Just rook c8.
Okay, so the engine's just wrong moves, to say it's a bad move. Okay.
Yeah, normal moves.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't see anything wrong with it, I must say.
Yeah, rook e8.
I mean, I also thought that not taking on b5 so early and putting all the rooks on the a file first was what she was going to do. I didn't realise she was going to take and go bishop a7, but, as I say, it's...
Nice, thank you for that comment, EDJ Chess. That's really interesting. Yao Yao did a lesson on interposition, and which included a Karpov game.
Oh, well,
so it is the Karpovian bishop a7.
Including that Karpov game. Excellent.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Rook e1 and queen c7 is where we're at now. Okay, so now actually white does have good control of the a file. And the computer does like it for white here.
Yeah, you still got to... I guess what white still has to do is find the right plan.
That's true.
But yeah, I do think white has a few more options without that black knight on the queen side. It would be really interesting. I'd never really thought about the fact that exchanging a pair of minor pieces might be bad news for black in this variation. You kind of think it wouldn't be, but...
I mean... It's not that clear to me how good it is for white.
No, exactly. It's not. It's still. You still have to find what you do next, I think.
Okay.
Just thinking everything on the
thinking of tripling up. Is that Alekine's gun when you triple up? Anyway, rook a2. What are you thinking? What is rook a2, queen d1, and queen a1? Says Plute Crew.
And that may be a good idea. My first thought is, and then what? What do we do after all that?
Yeah, because it could just end up in exchanges, couldn't it?
Well,
Unless
exactly.
you've got
What that does achieve is you'll probably end up with, you may get your, you do get your front rook on the A file. It's a possible plan, isn't it? It's not a bad idea. That's one thing.
Or can you gang up on the B5 point? Puka wants rook A7.
Yes. No. Exactly. Yeah. No. I think that's quite a plausible plan. I wonder if there's anything black can kind of do about it. I mean, I think as black, I would be thinking about trying to bring that. If white's playing queenside, I might bring that knight back to the queenside and go knight d7 to c5, and then, it's not going to be so. Although you couldn't, if rook a2 and queen d1 to a1 had all happened, knight c5 would be a blunder, because after bishop takes, you couldn't flick in a rook takes a3 because the bishop could take it. So, yeah, tricky. I don't know. What's the best move? Or what's the best plan, rather?
Yeah. Hi, Smooth Baron. B3, says Smooth Baron.
Yes, maybe. I mean, that's the other thing. Bobby Fischer added the whole B4 idea in this line in his second match with Spassky. And until then, people usually thought the C pawn's kind of holding back the B pawn. But now it's certainly true that B somewhere is a possibility. But at the moment, I wonder if... Well, I mean, it clearly, it makes the B pawn weaker, but it also creates a weak C pawn. So there's kind of pluses and minuses. And given that after C takes B3, you'd have to take back with the bishop at the moment. Otherwise, the bishop on A7 is not very defended.
Kevin Winter's giving us tips for the Grand National.
Okay.
Black Lion. After the Black Lion opening.
I don't know. I'm sort of warming to this rook a2, queen d1 to a1 plan, but it's very committal, isn't it? You kind of got to, if you start doing that and then change your mind, you look a bit silly, wouldn't you? So you've got to be sure that's what you want, I think.
Nice.
I mean, I did also wonder whether... Well, I wondered about queen e3 to b6, but I think knight d7 covers that, really. I mean, the other thing, if white plays h4 or something, trying to threaten h5, black will also always go h5. I think that's fair to say. But then, there could be an occasion where if the knight was headed back to the queen side, then h4 might be more.
I mean, where does Yario want to put her knight? Because we talked about Camwa redeploying the knight to like c5.
Well, that's right. If white was going for some b3 plan, then I think you might want to put the knight on d2 and go that way with it. Take back with the knight and then maybe have the bishop ready to attack the b pawn. But
yeah, Smooth Baron's also talking about rook a5 to look at that b pawn.
Oh, I see. Just getting on with it. Yeah, but if you take a rook off the a file, I think black will usually have the move bishop takes d5, because then that's what I meant by the bishop on a7 not being sufficiently defended.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be tricks. I mean, one of the great things about the Breyer for black is that there are quite a lot of positions where a piece sack on d5 for 2 pawns isn't so bad, because it kind of brings the entire position to life if white's very committed. I don't think that's going to happen here, but it's just one of the strange things about this opening. Normally you assessing piece against 3 pawn positions, but in the Breyer, I think she's pretty much doing.
Queen d1, she's doing it.
I think she's doing it. She's doing it. I think I prefer that to rook a2 because it's got a bit more disguise, hasn't it? I mean, rook a2 is really declaring to your opponent what you're up to, whereas queen d1, the opponent could still think that you're,
just defending against this bishop d5 for 2
liberating the f pawn for a charge forward, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Especially if you were playing Natasha, you'd unblock that f pawn and then who knows. But yeah.
Cool. Okay.
That's very interesting. I think she is playing the plan.
All righty. Let us see. Let's go back to Lanyao against Elżbieta.
Ooh.
And now where were we up to with this one?
Yeah, I can see some rather hefty engine assessments, and indeed,
okay,
seem to be a whole bunch of pawns up.
Oh my goodness! Do you remember where we were up to?
I will remember when we get there.
I'm going to just click somewhere, and you can tell me.
Yeah, no, we hadn't got this far. We were contemplating black castling queenside.
Earlier than this, yeah.
Yeah, I was saying white should meet h5 with h3, and that's what she's done.
Okay.
And then we were waiting for her to decide. Yeah, and she's taken on f3.
Right. Yeah.
And I
Could
think if
she
you have to
leave her
take on
bishop then?
f3, then h5 looks a little bit fanciful.
Ah, Lisa v Lizzie. Okay.
Yeah.
So bishop takes f3. She did take it off in the end. Queen takes f3.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, like I said, you often take with the knight, but here the knight's coming. Yeah, castle's long is probably a bit. Oh, I see. There's immediate.
Why is the computer so upset about that? Am I?
It's taking it very personally.
Very upset indeed.
Well, so is it worried about queen f5 check, king b8 sort of?
Knight c4 or something.
Maybe just knight c4 is very awkward to meet. f4 might not be silly either, but knight f4. Knight c4, I mean, has a lot going for it. Maybe f4. Let's see, after queen f5 check, if she'd gone king b8, was it f4 that everyone was upset about?
So king b8, f4.
Yeah.
So I just put the moves on.
I think f4 looks quite scary. Oh, maybe not. I mean, knight c4. Knight c4 was also very hard to meet. They're both good, I would have thought.
Yeah.
The idea is pretty clear. So, yeah, black can't take because she loses a piece at best. Probably more like a queen.
So just back here then. It's just interesting then that actually. So is castle's kingside any better?
Well, possibly, but it's really difficult to play moves which are
No.
that incoherent with your previous moves because it doesn't make any sense in conjunction with h5, really, does it? That's the thing. How can you go h5 and then go castle short a couple of moves later? You can't. I think you sometimes people make bad moves because they're trying to justify their previous moves to themselves, right? this may be you have to play castles long to justify h5. But,
yeah.
But it doesn't do you a lot of good.
Castles long, queen f5 check, and knight d7.
Yeah, and the problem is, look at White's rock solid defense of f2 and the structure on the king side. Giving an f pawn here isn't going to lead to some open file and counterplay. It's just a big pawn which creates weak squares, isn't it? Really, even it hits the bishop as well. So. Yeah, no, this is a bit of a disaster.
And she'll take it.
Yeah.
Bishop f6.
Yeah, I mean,
if she wins this, she's going to be on 4 out of 4.
Yeah, that doesn't feel like the square you want your bishop on either. f6.
Knight b3.
Okay.
Take on c4.
Yeah, I'm not sure about knight b3 because if black played b6 and met a4 with a5, that feels to me like the most stability on the queen side black's ever going to attain.
Okay, well, we did get b6, a4.
Yeah, but I think she should have gone a4 first, maybe, and then maybe she can put the knight on c4 in the case black goes a5.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not sure this was quite the right way to do it, but g5 is a serious mistake by black because a5, you've got to go a5 here. You've got to stop white playing a5. Just carves the entire position up if white can go a5. Oof.
g5.
I mean, she's obviously
an a5 now. Yeah,
a bit depressed by the turn of events and not really thinking this through very clearly. I think because I don't think you can allow a5 if you think you have any hope.
Okay, so b5.
Yep.
And knight takes c5.
There goes another pawn, but it's not just a pawn; it's all the squares as well, and the bishop on f6 is weakened and everything.
You don't like this very much, do you, Peter?
Well, there's not a lot to like, is there, really? I'm not.
No. Okay, rook f8, queen
h5. Another pawn. I mean, that may well be the best way to do it. I mean, white, apart from the order of knight b3 and a4, I think she's done everything very well. But...
Yeah. Queen g4, rook d7, queen e6.
And look at the total control. Black's only counterplay would be kind of g4, and the queen even controls it from the.
Yeah, this bishop e6 is quite a nice move, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good move. She's going to
locks the queen away. Yeah.
At some point. No, she's not even bothering with c4. She's just coming to take the other pawns. Yeah, this is.
Get the rook in.
Oh dear, here goes another one.
c4 now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, an impressive game here by Lanyao. Looking in a controlling position.
A very controlling position.
Against Lizzie.
Well, it is 4 pawns, quite aside from the other things going for her now. So.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, that's good. I mean, well played by her.
Yep. And Let's see, Madara against Sarah.
Ooh, well, okay, well, I said this one might liven up, and it certainly has.
Okay, now where were we with this one? We were
very early on. We were talking about things like knight d2 on moves 5 and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, back so even from here. So knight e5 here.
Yeah, I don't really understand. I don't think I like that one. I think I want white to play things like bishop b5 and have some knight e5 tricks and things, but knight e5 straight away. Okay, if you're taking with the bishop, it just looks not very exciting. If you're taking with the pawn, I tend to be a bit skeptical. I think white needs something quite concrete in those structures. Again, I think they may be something I tend to underestimate, but this one I don't hugely like the look of for white. Maybe it's okay.
So it takes 6 we do see with the pawn.
Yeah.
Knight d7. And Madara plays bishop e2.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it looks exciting for black, but you need to, as I was advised earlier, keep your excitement under control. I mean, I would look at, you might almost look at g6, g5 and bishop g7 there, but I think white has h4 levers and things which are possibly annoying.
Well, you mentioned g5. Actually, white gets in there first with g4.
Oh, white's going for, well, yeah. This is, but the trouble, I mean, g4 looks good if you have h4 to follow, but if you don't, then you need to answer the question, how are you going to control all those squares when black then gets time to play h5 at the right moment, doesn't he? Okay, if the queen's on d1 and the bishop's on e2, it may be difficult to get h5 in, but if white leaves that, I think g4 is quite ambitious. Yeah, if white, as I say, if white could go h4 now, then I understand the idea. But
so she plays bishop g4 to support the h pawn.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and Sarah plays bishop b6.
Queen b6.
Playing on the queen side, attacking that b2 pawn.
Okay, yeah, that's one of the virtues of that bishop on g6 is that rook b1 isn't there, so you can probably, that almost certainly does threaten to grab the pawn. I like that move. That's a good move.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, if the queen leaves d1, then you can start looking at h5, which is exactly what she's doing, actually. Sorry, I'm talking ahead. Exactly what is her plan. So she's trying to deflect the queen in order to play h5, and then at that point, white regrets g4 a little bit because weak squares are being created, but I think more on the white side than the black side.
Yeah. And Pluko is saying if white goes castle long, then this bishop g6 is also really strong there, kind of keeping that king cut off.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't think. Yeah, no, it's true. If white castled long, I might well try and avoid the exchange of queens and try and play sort of embarrass white's queen or something.
Push Harry. Well, Kevin, she couldn't push Harry straight away because you just take it, I think.
Well, yeah, I think Harry would have been taken. Not that would have worried some people, but
true, you could do it as a sacrifice. Yeah.
No, I think g4 made sense if white had h4, but because it was on prise, I kind of felt she didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always like this a takes b6 move. The open file is almost always more important than the double pawns with queen b3 and queen b6. It's not. There are no general rules in chess, but that's not far off. Oh, e4. That's a very ambitious play. Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I hadn't seen that angle to it. Okay, I kind of like that because if black plays something with d4 in reply, then it really works for white. I think white ends up with the right minor pieces for the structure, but the problem is white can't put any extra pressure on d5, so black may have time to go c4 and knight c5 or something, which is probably where black was intending to go anyway. But
right,
if white can't put that extra pressure on d5, then I think it's pleasant enough for black. Having said
you could just leave it there, couldn't you?
Well, yeah, I mean, c4 is just leaving it in a sense, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't want to. Black certainly doesn't want to take on e4, and certainly she doesn't want to push d4 either. But c4 is a way of just leaving it and creating some squares for your pieces. But the engine's not crazy about c4, but I'm not sure why.
Yeah,
it makes a lot of sense to me, I have to say.
Yeah. Takes, and f3.
That's a slightly strange move because I don't know if you really. I mean, sort of attacking d5 and trying to encourage black to take, but I'm not sure if that if f3 is really the square you want for that knight. Maybe it is. Maybe the knight is okay on d4 with vague ideas to come to f5 or b5.
Yeah,
I was thinking
I
of that
think
knight
it'd be
as
cool.
wanting to go sort of knight f1 to e3, but I'm not hugely convinced by either. That makes some sense, doesn't it? But I broadly speaking, I quite like Sarah's position because I don't think the bishop on g3 is going to be very easy to bring into the game. I like the open a file. I like the plan of b5 and b4.
Mm.
You get a sort of you can do a Keith style attack. You get 2 b pawns. You can do it twice.
Oh yeah, like kind of minority.
Yeah, you can do 2 minority attacks. I like the structure for black in general.
Ah, Fluko's saying, does black even have to defend d5?
Ah,
So knight c5, bishop takes d5, and knight d3 check. Just
maybe
give it
not,
up.
but I mean the king might not be in terrible danger on f1, and when white takes on d5, then c4 and b7 might become weak as well. So you might be right, but it's really committal. You'd need to see quite a long way forward before you made that decision, I think. That could play castles long and bishop takes, and then what, knight takes e5 maybe. I don't know. It depends how much you like black's position as it is, how much you want to sort of transform it with wild and wacky things. I think I quite like it as it is, but I can see that if you think the knight's going to be good on d4, it makes sense not to sort of invite it there. But I'll tell you, I've just seen something else I hadn't seen. Can black play bishop g5?
Oh, bishop g5 here.
Well, because bishop takes
I'll just
d5.
put it on the board.
Yeah, bishop g5 then isn't. Bishop takes d5 isn't possible. I don't think. Or maybe it is. I might just be having a hallucination. I thought maybe we could take and castles long, and then
take
that
here.
bishop was going to. Yeah, but I think actually I'm probably just getting confused. I thought this might be a bit dangerous, but it probably. I also don't like castling long because I love that a file. So
Right. Yeah.
mind you, I'm not sure what white's move is here, but it feels like there ought to be one. But I need to take my own advice here, which was that you only look at stuff like this if you're not convinced black's position is good in the basic case.
Yeah.
That was a crazy idea. Okay, so I
I
think
was just thinking, just take on f3
and knight c5,
and then do this knight c5 to d3 idea.
Well, knight c5 might be threatening knight b3 as well. I mean, it's not out of bounds of possibility. Although knight d4 probably covers that sort of. Yeah. Well, I think Sarah will be quite happy with this position.
Yes. Oh, okay. She has, in fact, taken on f3.
Okay. Yeah. There were some decent squares for both knights, but I think black squares are more exciting. And that rook is. You got both her rooks developed on their initial squares. That's
sensible chess, says Pluku. Exactly,
well, exactly.
right. Yeah.
You like that both rooks have open files on their initial squares. It's a very efficient mode of development. That is.
I wish I could do arrows. Actually, that would do arrows along all the rook paths.
You know what I mean? Learn how to do that. It feels like who needs to worry about extra tempi for development when they all get developed without moving?
Yeah.
So I like that.
Okay, nice. All right, let's see. Audrey against Salamea.
Oh wow, this is all happening.
So now we had what? This was.
Remember how this started?
This was another Sicilian.
Oh, it was this. Of course, it was. Yeah. Okay, so knight db4, which was new to me really, and I was wondering about bishop g5, but I thought black was going bishop e7.
So this is where we got up to, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's where we got up to, and I thought that bishop g5 would be met by bishop e7, but she met it with queen b6, which feels a bit. Well, I start to worry about black's development a bit at that point. After something just, because now there's no threat to take on e5, so then the bishop can just move to other squares. There's none of this knight c2 idea at the end anymore. So bishop c4. It's true that was also after bishop e7 takes, queen takes, the same problem, but at least in that case, there's some pieces exchanged. So this feels to me like black's running some risk here. Do you think, just development-wise, white?
Yeah, because black's not
got a lot of pieces out.
Yeah.
Still, after h6, bishop c1, I don't want to overemphasize the development angle of it. It's a difficult argument to pull at that point, but I'd be interested in why she didn't go to e3 or somewhere. Because that feels more, going to e3 and threatening
natural,
e5.
Yeah.
Maybe she thought that wasn't a very good square.
G5, maybe.
Okay, but yeah, perhaps. Yeah, it's possible. I'm sort of getting excited by white's development, but you're probably right. Knight d5 would be a logical reason not to do that. Even
Yeah,
bishop
because if you,
h4 doesn't look that silly to me, because I don't think black's going g5 and h5 or something.
yeah,
I'm not sure. Bishop c1's okay, but I was quite excited by white's lead in development, and I'm less so after that. But
right,
okay, it's also. But I still think black has difficulties because white has simple moves coming like knight c3, and I'm still not sure how black's after knight c3. That knight on b4 is in danger of getting kicked to quite a bad route, isn't it? Like a6 and c7 or something.
yeah, a5.
Okay, that makes more sense of the knight on a6, I suppose. But again, it's a not strictly a developing move.
Oh,
Which is a bit
developing,
rough.
yeah. So knight c3.
Yeah, I do like white's position, I must say.
And d5.
Yeah.
Bishop back.
That's an interesting move. I thought she might go just to e2 or something, or even to, I don't know. But this one makes me almost wonder whether she's eyeing some sacrifice with a3 and bishop takes d5 or something. Probably not, but, I think white has some quite sharp possibilities here.
I was thinking she might sometime.
I think she's aiming. She wants to put it on
a4.
the diagonal which supports mate, bishop c2 eventually, I think.
Right.
It's also
Yeah.
possible. Well, I think there's a lot to like about the position. Where's black's king going to be safe is a good
Yeah.
good first question to ask.
Can't go queenside, so it's going to have to go kingside, I think. But
yeah, and that's when a3 knight somewhere, bishop c2. She's ready for bishop c2, queen d3 very quickly, and you kind of think,
oh yeah, this
king
is
going to be
nice
safe there
white,
either.
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's quite clever what she's done.
Bishop d7, bishop e3.
Yeah.
Rook c1, castle. Okay, so she's gone. She has gone.
Castles is. I think the engine is thinking that castles is pretty.
I tell you what, the next three moves are exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
A3, knight, bishop c2. No subtlety.
It's an awful lot of sense, isn't it? Because I doubt that black can
B3,
even grab on b2. Yeah, this is horrific for black. She's about to be bishop h6, isn't she? There's no defense.
Here we go.
Oh,
knight a4.
oh, she played. That's very precise. Trying to play a move before grabbing the pawn.
Queen here, and bishop h6.
I'm not sure about knight a4. Was she trying to get rid of some queen takes b2 ideas? I mean, she will have calculated them, and I haven't. And maybe she's right that you need to deal with that. But I think you'd rather do without it if you can.
Right.
Maybe you can't. So there's no tricks with knight b4 and knight takes.
So is the knight? You're thinking knight's a bit.
Oh, the knight's sort of slightly in danger of. I mean, black played b5, b4, which is one way of exploiting the knight being there. But it probably, unless that adds a lot to black's position, that's. I wondered if the knight might be hanging in some variation where you can go knight b4 and then take on c2. But I think the queen can go to b3, and so the piece sack doesn't work. Yeah, but you need to check that. I think the queen can only go to b3. Anything else, it would work. So.
Okay. B5,
so b5, yeah.
B4.
And knight e2. I mean, the problem with driving it back to e2 is it's threatening to come to f4 and sack on g6.
Oh, yeah, it's going to.
Carnage. Yes. That would be very unpleasant.
So white's got, 5 pieces on the king side?
Yes.
And the queen can defend, but black can't defend very quickly. So by Julian Hodgson's rules, then white has a good attack here.
Is that Julian's rule?
He counts that you can't just count the pieces that are aiming at the king.
I'm sure no one had ever suggested that before.
And then white has more than black, so that's the thing. You got to read Attack with Julian Hodgson.
Did Vukovic write the entire arc of attack without thinking about the number of pieces?
Yeah. Julian is the person.
I see.
BA, knight a7. And
have you ever read Michael Tal's book on attacking?
No.
Very, very, very good. I think
Tal. I bet it is. I can imagine because he's a.
Well, he sort of knows a bit about it, doesn't he? I think it's Tal and Dambsky or something. So I think the other author was kind of a journalist, and there were little bits of dialogue in it and stuff. So it's a lovely, lovely book.
Oh wow!
And I don't know where I sort of stumbled across it. I don't think it's one that I've seen talked about as much as it deserves to be. So
what's it called? Do you remember?
That would be a memory test again. But it's something plausible like,
Attacking with Tau.
Attacking with Mikhail Tal or something, yeah. It's sort of something like what you would call it if you were doing a book on attacking.
If you were Tal.
Yeah, exactly. If you were Tal or you were Tal's publisher, you would call it something like that, wouldn't you? You wouldn't try and keep it anonymous.
Yeah.
Okay, I think any survival chances Black has here probably rest on a timely rook takes c2 to avoid getting mated on the other side. But bishop b5 is obviously something White needs to... I mean, Black's done quite well at...
But White goes knight d2 next.
Yeah, which I'm not... I mean, that makes sense because it gives the queen a square on f3, which still defends the knight.
Yeah, okay.
But I wonder whether White could have done something more. But Black has sort of forced White to think. He's given her pause for thought in... has given her pause for thought in what... because bishop b5 is a threat, and she needs to kind of move her pieces towards king without allowing that. Yeah. And I do think it's useful for Black that sometimes rook takes c2 could be the saving grace if White's about to really deliver something big on the king side.
Yeah, you're right. I was looking at White's plan, not Black's just then.
Well, but White's plans are probably quite scary too. That feels like there ought to be something.
Okay, so
but yeah, the idea is that knight f4, bishop b5 at least distracts the queen from that diagonal. And
right, the computer did like something. Look, I'm going to just...
Yeah, I'm curious. I'm sure that there are good moves.
Rook a1.
Yeah, that's not a human move. That's very
Rook a1.
Yeah, exactly.
Rook a1, why?
Can you not see why that's devastating?
Why would you do that? Or bishop d1? They both look really strange to me.
Queen e3 makes a lot more sense to me because you're trying to put the queen on a square where it supports knight g5. So I think that queen e3...
rook a1 avoids bishop a3. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, but that's not a human priority, I don't think. Maybe it is. Maybe it should be. Maybe we could. But of those three, I only really think that queen e3 is one she might look back and think I probably maybe could have done that. I don't think she'll think that about rook a1.
Yeah.
Do you think about rook a1 in this? I don't think anyone does. I mean, maybe
I suppose if you've worked out all the tactics and you realise bishop a3 keeps happening, then you might. But you'd still feel a bit weird.
But I'm surprised that bishop a3 keeps happening when White's so quick on the king side. I kind of felt like it shouldn't. Yeah. But okay, it's interesting. But knight d2 makes some human sense as well. Although now bishop a3 is maybe going to happen at some point.
So bishop b5.
I think she did well with b4.
Oh, it does look queen here and bishop a3 here it is.
Oh, it's now rather than...
It's happened.
Okay. Yeah. So, okay, there we go. Well, I think Black, was in trouble and still is in a bit of trouble, but she's done well to get this amount of complexity in it. But, if the solution was rook d1, I think that's really quite tough.
Oh.
So just rook e1.
Is now having a bit more of a think and actually really likes White still.
Well, I mean, it's hard to believe. I mean, after White plays something like queen e3 in a moment, bishop g5 to f6 and mate on h8 is a pretty serious threat.
Yeah.
The king side is a big...
Scary. Yeah, you're back to counting the pieces again.
So I would go rook e1 first and then maybe queen e3 or something. I don't know. Seems hard to believe that White can't drum up some trouble.
Yeah.
Oh, the evaluation bar's not liking your trick. That's never fair when that happens. I mean, queen g3 is a pretty scary move as well at some point.
Oh, what, just for bishop g5, queen h4?
No, certainly bishop takes g6 and immediate. Yeah.
Queen g3 says smooth baron. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know about now. I wanted to go. Maybe that if she's not playing rook e1 fairly quickly, it's probably because she's looking at queen g3, I should think.
Yeah.
But I don't like it because I think Black can then play rook takes c2 and bishop takes f1.
Or if she doesn't mind sacrificing, she's quite a sacrificial player.
No, I think she's quite aggressive, and this is a position where you want to be, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I mean, I still think she has a very, very, very good attack.
Yeah. I would.
But I still think Black did quite well.
I would put money on Audrey winning this game.
For it not to be even worse than this, actually.
Yeah.
From the position she got to. So it may well be that queen g3 is very strong. I mean, actually, even if she plays rook c2 and bishop f1, Black still does have to worry about this bishop g5 to f6 thing, and it might just be very good.
Yeah. Smooth Baron's saying rook e1 as well. Rook e1, then queen g3.
Yeah, I think that's the simple way to do it. Although rook e1, can black maybe play queen h4 or something? That's the
Okay.
if you want, if there's a reason why queen g3 immediately might be the move, it might be something like that. Yeah, it's worth. I don't know. Very interesting, but I think good chances for Audrey in this position.
Okay. There's lots of games, so let's keep moving. We are going to see Olivia Smith, Welsh player Olivia Smith, against Sheila Jackson. And where did this wasn't a C3 Sicilian, was it?
It was
the other kind of
another Rossalimo. Oh, we left it where black was deciding how to take back on c6 or whether to take the bishop. Do you remember?
Yeah. So we had knight c6,
yes.
And Sheila was having a think, and I was wanting to see queen b5, but you were explaining how actually white gets quite a lead of development.
I don't know if I was explaining. I was trying to figure out how scary that lead in development was, and thinking it might be quite scary. I think that d takes isn't a bad idea, because this structure where black plays e5 and then can prevent f4 with knight g6 has something going for it. But I do wonder why you would play queen b6 if you're going to do that. Maybe it's the only way to force knight takes c6, but you know what I mean? The position feels better with the queen on c7 or something.
Sure.
So if e5 first, maybe white has some queen f3, which could be quite annoying, because you don't want to have to. Well, maybe you.
Oh yeah.
You could play f6, but it may well not be part of your game plan.
Well, e5 and f6, that seems really. I wouldn't like to do that.
Well, it certainly leaves castling a bit of a challenge, doesn't it?
Mm.
So yes.
Knight g6.
Yep.
Knight c3.
Did you see that cheeky comment in the chat there?
I saw it from Fluke. Well, you can tell that it was Sheila.
You have to admit, the man makes a fair point.
It is true. It is a good point. I just looked at the names of the players rather than the actual position.
It is yes. Right.
Bishop e7, but Sheila's playing black, of course, so that doesn't really difference. Bishop e3.
Oh
no, it's all right, Fluke. It's fine. It was a good.
Engine really doesn't like bishop e3, so I assume that black can take on b2.
Yes.
And the players will have looked at knight a4, queen b4 or something. And then it's true, that doesn't look very scary for black, because the queen can come back via b4 and then d6. So that may well be a pawn.
Sheila doesn't take it, though.
No, I think Sheila can. Sheila can be a little bit risk averse, I think. And these are moments where, taking those pawns always involves a degree of risk. And I think if you are a bit risk averse, I think she should take that one.
Well, you see, then Olivia can take advantage of that.
Yeah, bishop e3 is one of those moves that you would play if you can play it, but you probably can't, strictly speaking. But
yeah. Okay, so queen c7.
Yeah, one thing that does do, one thing that bit of gaining time does, is that white can play f4 before black can go e5. And I think if black could have got e5 in, then her position is quite solid. She's got long-term aspirations to sort of do something on the dart squares or something. But if she can't, if f4 happens first and e5 isn't really possible, then I start to like white, because if white can get e5 in, then I'm not sure what black's queenside, black's bishop is going to do.
She played it slowly though, bishop e3. She thought for
she probably
nearly 9 minutes. So
that's interesting. I wonder what she saw, or whether she.
I guess she was thinking about whether queen b2 was.
Yeah, no, I wonder whether she was slightly bluffing, or whether she actually saw something she liked.
I think she might have been bluffing.
Yeah, I think she was bluffing.
f4. And Sheila castles.
Yes.
Right, we want to see f5 in a bit. a4. Okay, stopping b5. And queen a5 from Sheila.
Yeah, you see, I don't really see what black has against white's plan of going e5, queen h5, rook f3 to h3, and bishop d3. It seems like a pretty scary kingside attack to me. And maybe black can play some queen b4 and take on b2 under less good circumstances than she could have done earlier. But once e5's on the board, then the knight heads towards e4, and that feels like it just adds to the attack, really. So I rather like this for white now.
Yeah. Okay. So e5.
But to be fair, I think Olivia's right to go king h1 because bishop c5 might be a good answer to the immediate.
Thanks for the follow, Safeway. King h1.
Yeah, maybe king h1. I don't know whether it's necessary or not, but I think she's concerned about bishop c5. She
doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't want that bishop just swapping off, I guess.
Well, but I think actually, as long as there's a good sort of tactical response to bishop c5, then probably you could allow it because that's not the crucial bishop for giving mate, is it? It's the e3 bishop with the rook f3. But okay, that's a slightly primitive bit of thinking.
And I guess if you're going e5 anyway and you're putting all your pawns on dark squares, you don't mind so much swapping off that one. The one on e3
defends them, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Defends all the pawns on dark squares.
Queen b4 from.
Well, no, that's if you've decided that you should have taken on b2, you come back and do it again, I guess.
It's taken quite a few moves because it went from b6 to c7 to a5 to b4.
No, it did. It's not the most efficient. I think white's doing very well, but on the other hand, white still has to worry about where that horse is going after queen takes b2 or something.
Smoothbone, good point, is saying that if now that king h1 is in, then
that's very true
at all because of queen h5.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a good point indeed.
Oh, okay. So maybe queen b4 is just trying to get bishop c5 in.
Well, it attacks the bishop. I think she's trying, but I think if white went bishop d3, which is what white wants to do, I think that then black probably does take on b2, and she's gone bishop b3 because she's concerned about it.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting that she sacked the b pawn once, but not twice. But maybe she thought, you get away with it once, but not twice.
Well, it now really does look like Sheila's going to take it. Maybe Olivia can read body language and all that kind of stuff.
It's possible.
Okay, so bishop f6.
Didn't she do medicine or something? I don't know. I think she might.
Did she?
I've got a feeling she did. I don't know. I don't know why I think that, but vaguely thinking back, I had a feeling she did something like that. And maybe she can read body language.
I wouldn't.
I don't like bishop f6 at all because it seems to me that e5 is the plan now. I mean, black's probably threatening e5, but white's going to go e5 for sure. And I think she's trying to gain a tempo with rook e8, but I think compared with inviting e5, that's relatively small fry, and she will suffer a bit from that. So
actually, Olivia did not play e5 straight away.
That's a real shame. She should. I thought she was. I mean, I can see what might make you reluctant is that bishop can no longer go to d3, so the attack's not as strong as it was. But it still feels like the right thing to be doing.
Rook d8.
But probably, I mean, actually, black couldn't really go e5 anyway because f5 was still quite strong. So
true. So now probably at e5, but
I think I would. I mean, she went rook d1, which is also fine, but I mean, black's main problem is what black's main problem has always been liable to be, which is that bishop on c8. What are you going to do with it?
Yeah. And so bishop d7. Oh, she's going to put it back to e8, maybe.
I do now think. I mean, she went bishop d2. I think e5, bishop e7, knight e4 is a very tempting plan. Although maybe black can play c5 then, and try and put the bishop on c6. Oh, actually, that might be a reason not to do that.
Bishop d2, queen f8.
Oh, queen f8.
Queen h5.
I think if you have to go queen f8, then bishop d2 gains a lot of appeal, I think. Yeah, she's sort of doing our plan in a different move order, isn't it?
Bishop e8.
I do think if the bishop was on d3...
So do you now like rook f3, rook h3, just this kind of going directly for the king? Do you like that?
I mean, one of black's resources against it has gone, which is knight f8. There's a queen there now. So that adds something to it. So I think you just have to calculate. You have to calculate how you break through, because any bishop takes h6 sack is kind of covered by having a queen on h8. So it still looks pretty tempting, but obviously with the pin on the d file, it makes you think twice about
so if you went
where you move the rook and go knight e4 or something. So
they could go Sheila could go bishop c3. And you'd have to take back with the pawn if you've gone rook f3.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be too upset to take back with the pawn, but I do feel just a little bit nervous leaving that pin. It's a bit all in, isn't it? I feel like there must be other ways of doing it. I mean, e5, knight e4 still makes sense to me, unless...
Smooth Baron's saying f5.
f5 I haven't really thought much about, but I'm aware that it's kind of there. And if black has to take, then it gives you the e4 square by another means, doesn't it? For example, takes, knight e5, there's knight e4. Did I say f4 square? I meant e4 square, sorry. So that's also... And black maybe black does have to take. But she could also maybe just meet f5 with knight e5, give a pawn, takes, check, and then bishop f7 or king f8, and she's got some positional compensation there. I don't think I'd do that with white, given that I think I ought to be trying to mate her, really. I mean, f5, knight e5, g4 probably isn't ridiculous either, actually.
You see, yeah. I'd be a bit scared, I think.
Yeah, well, you'd be a bit scared as black as well, wouldn't you?
That's true as well. Black is cramped. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I mean, g4 is an option she's given herself by refusing to play e5 so many times. It may not be that silly. I mean, actually, g4, g5, and then rook f3 to h3. But still, black goes h6 probably, and it loses a pawn, but so what? So, yeah, I think white's got a great position, but it's not so easy to do it. I think I would have looked hard at the second b-pawn sacrifice if I'd been...
So you're betting on g4 now?
No, I'm not betting on g4. That would be very reckless. Not sure even Danny would bet on g4. But... There's also, after g4, there's also bishop takes c3, actually. And if bishop takes, then the f-pawn hangs. So g4 is not a good move.
Right. Yeah.
I will definitely not bet on that. But...
Interesting. Okay, so
it's an interesting position. I mean, it's sort of, I don't know. She has been quite reluctant to play e5, so I suspect she's aiming at some way to do it which doesn't involve e5, and that could well be an f5.
I think Sheila's quite a good defender. I mean,
she's done e5. As soon as I complete a sentence about why she's probably not going to go e5, she goes e5, and I wonder, what are we doing? Okay, I mean, e5 and f5 is not a bad plan either, because that pressure on f7. I was looking before at pressure on h7, but pressure on f7 might not be silly either.
True. So f5 straight away, or you can bring in.
I'm not sure. There's something about it I don't like that much, but it is a lot of pressure on f7. It might just be rather good. Takes, rook takes. But then we still have the problem that you can't play rook df1 without leaving that bishop on priest. So I think... I don't know, it still feels like it ought to be before it. What's that?
Commentator's curse says all.
Exactly. Well, if I wanted her to play e5, that would be the way to do it, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so she's not... There's no way she's going to play e5.
Exactly.
All right, let's keep moving. So we will have a look at... We've seen all these games now, haven't we?
When did we last see Camwell?
Let's see Camwell again. This was doubling the rooks on the...
This is the Karpov game.
It's hardly moved since, but it has done... I think it was Pluku's plan of...
and the plan is for Camwell to spend 15 minutes, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, how about h5, queen a1, bishop h6, trying to take away a square for that bishop to come back to.
Right, yeah.
Is that a plan?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is a plan. Is it a rubbish one? It is clearly a plan in a sense. It's one thought. But she's done knight d7. I think she was probably... It felt to me like she was right to do that, although the engine doesn't agree.
Yeah, I was playing all the great players, Karpov and Alekhine's gun. She knows her classics.
Karpov and Alekhine would be quite a scary combination, wouldn't it? Wouldn't leave you too many weaknesses to aim at.
Okay, Camel's putting her knight in on b6.
B6.
Where's she going? Is she trying to just block it off with a4?
She might be. Is she trying to? She might want to have knight c8 in some positions. I don't know.
Right.
But okay, after queen a1, it's a good
Oh,
question.
Smooth Baron doesn't like the plan.
Well, there are always some skeptics, aren't there? I think it's got something going. I'm still slightly unsure. It's, like I said, it's very committal because it, you can't sort of start doubling back halfway through it without looking a bit ridiculous, can you? Sort of. So queen a1 threatens bishop takes b6, doesn't it? Which is,
yeah.
So I suspect that she is going knight c8 or knight a4. I don't think I like because I think it's going to. Well, it loses a pawn, and I don't think black gets enough for it. Actually, I don't think black gets anything for it, probably. So I suspect it's knight c8.
Yeah. So white just queen a1.
I think so. The plan was always dependent on how much white achieves by
tripling rooks.
Yeah, by getting the a file for herself like that. She still needs kind of an entry square, but I think the most likely entry point is playing rook a5 and just hassling the b pawn. Yeah. That's where a move like knight c8, Camel needs to be quite careful that she's got some resources to defend that b pawn.
Yes.
So I still quite like what white's doing here. I think.
Yeah.
Fight me.
All right. So we're going to hop back to the She Plays to Win tournament. So I should say, actually, this international tournament, Women's Invitational, is being organised by Aga Maleska, who's the women's director for the ECF. And the She Plays to Win tournament is being organised by Lauren da Costa. So let's have a look at that one. I just have to switch my hide on stream, show on stream. There we go. Smooth, huh? And we are. Let's check in on this game again. Mashed out. Ellen against mashed out.
85.
So, where did we get to?
We got to me saying it was a textbook demonstration.
You certainly had king
knight fd7 when she exchanged the knight on e5 off to gain the c4 square. So about move 18, I think we were at.
18, yeah, that's where we are. Okay, knight fd7.
Okay, and bishop e3 is logical because she wants to take the b6 knight in return for the. I mean, it has the same impact in terms of exchanges. You're taking off one knight, and the knight still has a c4 square, but it does hit the rook, which might be handy. So that move makes sense to me.
Yeah, and those knights come off.
And actually, the
knight e4.
Yes.
Okay, and then mashed out puts the knight in on c4, which was what we were looking at. So it was kind of that c4
but
square.
What white has achieved is trying to get her own knight towards c5, and that's
it's getting there, isn't it?
It's sort of and I mean, if it goes there now, it will be exchanged for the bishop. Bishop c5 is what she did, and then it sort of is on the way there, isn't it? Now the question is, does she have to take on c5? Because I suspected she didn't really want to, but if you look at it from just the point of view of the weak squares, you don't want to play bishop takes c5, do you? But maybe there's more to it than that. For example, is f5 possible?
F5 here.
Bishop takes e7. It may just be a bad move. It's so many times now I look at things where you exchange a bishop for a knight, and the engine isn't impressed because it's in the bishop. But my intention then is to play bishop e7, f takes e4, and take on a3. But I think there's rook a. There's just rook a1 at the end, so taking on a3 doesn't matter so much. No, in that case, that's probably not a good idea. If white is just taking back a pawn on a6, then no. In that case, I think white's defended very well. And what Machtel did is probably the most logical attempt to still make something of it. So bishop takes e7 takes, bishop c5, knight takes a3, rook a1 just looks fine for white to me. because once the a6 pawn goes, then the
Yeah.
c4 square does start to look a bit sort of academic.
This way gets very
well.
symmetrical.
She gets to go. Ah, she gets to take. Wait a minute. So what happened to knight a6? Knight a6 is met by knight c.
Okay, so knight a6 here.
I guess it's met by knight c2 and then something rook a6 or something. But I mean,
Yeah.
is that right? I've seen stupider moves than
Knight c2.
I don't know. I guess.
Looks like it's just going to liquidate.
Well, but I want to play rook c6 and try and take on b4 and hope that only some of it liquidates. But I don't know.
Sorry.
I bet white needs to move.
White needs to play something.
Well, there's rook d1, I suppose. Oh, one important point is that white doesn't have rook d2 because of knight e3 check. So rook d1, rook c6, rook d2 isn't possible because of knight e3 check winning the exchange. So
yeah,
that's probably quite important. And so I don't know what's black's next move here. If it's black's move, well, in time trouble you'd make some luft. You'd go like h6 or something. But rook a8 is probably a move as well, just to threaten the knight genuinely. Yeah, okay. I guess this is what I'm trying to work out. What white was afraid of. I don't know whether the move she played is better or worse than this, but I was just trying to work out because you need a reason not to take a pawn off, don't you? Really, in that position. I suspect this is the reason, and it's not. It's not a ridiculous reason at all. So, yeah. Rook c3, a5. Oh, and now the engine thinks the a pawn is at least as strong as Machtel's b pawn, so the engine's not hugely impressed with her handling here. I thought it was quite clever when she went a5. But
yeah.
It's a nice little tactic, winning back the piece and everything.
It takes here.
And then just rook c1. The engine thinks the a pawn will be a bit
fairly
more annoying.
Equal here.
The knight on c5 does actually do I mean, we've ended up with a position where white's got the c5 square and black hasn't got the c4 square, which ruins our entire narrative of earlier. And yeah, I can see why white's doing fine, because the knight and the pawn between them sort of prevent black's rooks doing what they want to do, I guess. I think white did this really well. Basically. Don't you think? I think she's been quite clever about this.
Yeah.
If she plays something like rook c3 now, takes rook a1, I can start to imagine that white's a pawn actually is just rather more dangerous than the fairly well blockaded c pawn. So it's presumably still a draw, but it's just a question of reaching a position who has to be the more careful.
Yeah, that pawn's pretty nice, isn't it?
It's not a bad pawn. Yeah. Good job by white so far, I think. How's the time situation? Similar, yeah. So
they're the same, 17 minutes.
No one's about to blow up on the clock, so I think white's done a really good job.
Yeah. Okay.
I really need to go in about 3 or 4 minutes.
Oh, do you?
Maybe
okay.
we should have a very quick round. I'm sorry, I need to be a bit stricter with my time.
Let's do it. Yeah. Okay. So here we go. Let's just look at the position. So this is Carmen against Lara. And Lara had all those extra pawns in the center, didn't she?
She still does.
And still does, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yes, we didn't really get to see how that attack panned out.
Oh, was this the one where we were wondering which way?
This is the one where we were betting on the recapture, isn't it?
On f5. All right, we better find out the answer to that.
Bishop takes. No.
Bishop takes. Well, I bet on the knight, and you bet on the pawn, and she actually took with the bishop.
Well, the engine preferred rook b8 to bishop takes, but I do think that's a bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm sure that was wrong. Okay, so bishop takes. And then once bishop takes is on there, it seems happy enough. Because it still makes sense. She's still threatening bishop takes h3 and white has to go knight somewhere. But I mean, one thing it does do is give the move knight d5 into the pot, which might be handy.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I think it's all good.
Okay, and then we get to here.
It certainly turned out well, because now
yes,
pawn takes and that knight is totally undermined, and if it takes on d3, that pawn is scary, I guess.
Yeah.
Or c takes, and those pawns maybe. There might be doubled pawns on the 6th. After sort of knight takes, presumably c takes, because e takes is met by takes d2 king f1, so it needs to be c takes, and then if d takes c5 e3, and
yeah.
pawns on the 6th, they're always kind of storming, aren't they?
Very nice, very nice. Yeah. Okay, so that's looking good for.
Yeah,
we're looking winning for Lara.
Yeah.
All righty, Louise. Yes. So how did this go with the f5 and g5? Eugenia was going for the attack. Seems to have really just gone into an endgame.
Yeah, but that's kind of. Well, I mean, it feels like not what you want when you've gone the f5 and all the aggressive stuff. You know, the weaknesses will be likely to tell a bit in an ending, and you don't get the sort of middle gamey counterplay. I mean, the knight on c4 is fine, but the d pawn is a bit lacking in defenders, isn't it?
Okay, so the d pawn, black's d pawn's a little bit weak.
That's well, I mean, it always was one of the issues, but I think ever since when she went g5 and d takes meant that it had to be recaptured with the knight, the d pawn was always going to be an issue. I think it is here. But okay, I mean, there's still a bit of fight, but I'm not sure how she defends that d pawn in the pretty short term, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, white's definitely still better and always has been, I think. I think Louise has really, really moved into gear. And I think she seems to me to be one of those players who needs to move into gear. It's important for her to get going and get in the mood. Okay.
She's Sunak's wife. This is going to be a topical joke, and I'm not up with it, so I'm assuming she's not a chess player.
She's not popular at the moment, I don't think.
Okay, right.
She's
Okay.
I think she's accused of being rather creative with her tax status.
Right. Yes.
Be fair to say.
Okay.
Allegedly.
Daria against Alessia. Now,
I think Black showed very good theoretical knowledge and is getting
that's
the sort of
right. She was way up on the clock, and she knew.
This is the position you want with that kind of compensation. You know, it's much more about White's king than it is about Black's king.
Yeah.
Now, none of the moves that might win immediately because Queen c5 can get met by Queen h4 and Queen c4 check, and Queen f4 can get met by, I suppose, Rook f1 or something. But you know, it's clear who has the initiative.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm surprised that the engine says -6, but it's actually only one pawn, so maybe the threats are more decisive than I realised.
It's gonna,
it might be one of those -6s where you need to find a particular idea to show that it's -6. But you know, this is a good position for Black. The minor piece. Oh, sorry, it's 2 pieces. What am I on about? It's 2 pieces against the Rook. I was trying to find play for the exchange. If it's 2 pieces,
no.
I understand why Black's doing so well. So Black has a positional and material advantage.
Yeah.
No, a very good preparation, I think, from her. And
she really knew that.
Okay, can we run through the last one? Because I literally need
to
rush off. Sorry.
Okie doke. And the last one is Zoe. Zoe against Hannah. And here we go. So.
Okay, so first thing to say is I think she would like to play knight d3, but it's probably met by a6. And the bishop can't keep defending the knight. Is that true?
Yeah.
It may be true. There might be some trick then. Knight c5, a takes, and the rook's attacking the knight. So maybe it's not that simple, but there's some calculation to be done there.
Yeah. Okay, so Zoe's
Black's a pawn up, and
and Zoe's horsey's being attacked.
Yeah, she's struggling a bit with the horsey. I don't know where it can go. Also, after knight d3, I guess there's c4, knight takes e5, rook e6. Sorry, there's f4. Then that's no good. So, yeah, okay. But I think Black is doing fairly. I'm quite impressed by Hannah in the tournament so far. I think she's played really well and done pretty well too.
Yeah, what's she on? She's on.
But Zoe's had
Yeah,
positions where she deserved more than draws sometimes, so I hope she finds a way to hold things together.
Yeah. Well, Zoe's played a lot of chess in the last couple of
No,
weeks.
she
She's
has. I
come
mean,
straight
like
from
I
the
said yesterday,
Europeans.
I'm really impressed that
Yeah.
she can come from the European individual and do this at all, because those things are pretty grueling.
Hi, Mink. It's snowy in Hamburg. Wow.
Oh, wow.
April.
Wow.
Good grief.
Impressive.
Yeah. All right. We're going to have to
Yes.
finish it there. Lots of exciting games this round. Thanks, everyone, so much for
thank you very
all your
much for all the
comments in the
chat and all
chat.
the.
Yeah, makes it much more funny. And thanks very much, Peter, for commentating. And thanks, everybody. I'll be back with Matthew Sadler on Sunday at 3 o'clock. And I know Danny Gormally is going to cover some of the interim rounds. So please do keep following these wonderful tournaments. And thanks, everybody, very much for watching.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Bye.